Podmortem would like to thank Original Cinematic for sponsoring this week's episode. Original Cinematic is an independent production company that has made it their mission to create, produce, and promote films that are inclusive, honor women, promote the LGBTQIA+ community, and provide prominent positions and roles to POC actors and filmmakers, and promote the films of marginalized and underrepresented populations. These are all things that are extremely important to our podcast as well.
Original Cinematic is currently accepting scripts and treatments. Both William and Xxena Rush are also available via email or Zoom to discuss writing and provide input and resources to all aspiring writers, free of charge. Their information will be made available in the show notes. There may be delays due to a hectic schedule and all projects being read on a first-come, first-served basis, but everything will be read and responded to. William Rush has individually produced numerous projects, including Pack is Here, Before, The Cottage, The Winemaker, and Day by Day. Their multi-award-winning film Group premiered and was celebrated at multiple film festivals as well as screenings, both in person and via Zoom, that were graciously made available to us and our patrons.
Original Cinematic has many exciting projects on the horizon. Their next film, Immersion, has been completed. The award-winning Sweetener is in development. Fetish begins shooting in September, and Encore will begin next spring. Their documentary, Women in Conversation, is slated for a September release, and we're looking forward to each and every one of them. It is truly an honor to partner with Original Cinematic, and we can't thank them enough for their contribution to our show. And now, back to our regularly scheduled program.
Salutations! Welcome to Podmortem. I'm Travis Hunter-Sayapin, joined as always by my co-hosts, my sister and my brother-in-law.
Hi, I'm Reneé Hunter-Vasquez.
Hi, I'm John Paul Vasquez.
This week we're broadcasting live from a television tower in Tokyo, discussing the 1954 kaiju film, Godzilla. This film was directed by Ishirō Honda from a screenplay by Honda and Takeo Murata, with a story credited to Shigeru Kayama. Calling upon the horrors and destruction of war, Godzilla is as potent with social commentary as it is pertinent viewing for genre fans. With masterful special effects work for the time, elaborate sequences, brilliantly realized sets, a grippingly resonant score, and a compelling story anchored by memorable characters and performances, this film would defy its initially mixed reviews to establish a cultural icon still referenced, revered, and relevant 70 years after its initial release. This film was suggested to us by friends of the show, Jimmy Comer and Kristen Lofton. We'd like to thank both of them for their continued support of the show, as well as this suggestion. So, Godzilla. What were your first impressions on the film?
I'll be honest, I really love Godzilla, and I thought that I had seen this, but I hadn't. I've seen other ones. I've seen him fight the metal guy, Megalo or whatever, and then the three-headed guy, Rodin, I can't remember what his name is, but I remember watching those as kids, and then I watched the cartoon, which there's two of them. One was just Godzilla, and the other one was Godzilla the series. That one kind of felt like more like the Batman one, the good Batman, the old Batman cartoon.
The animated series?
Yeah, the animated series.
Yeah.
It kind of, the animation was like that. And I do remember that, but I that's not the one that I remember watching. The one I remember watching, I believe, was from 78.
Okay.
And it was just Godzilla. And that one, it was him. He had... I always thought it was his son, but looking it up, it was his nephew, Godzuki. And I guess at this point, it was like they were just trying to point Godzilla at kids to like be more kid friendly.
Nephew is hilarious. I don't know
It's
why.
It's overly complicated.
Yeah.
But they're like, we don't want him to be your father.
Yeah, it's like Godzuki's always getting into shit. It's like that can't be his boy. It's got to be somebody
Like
else.
he would have raised him right.
Yeah,
That's really funny.
because I think in the I don't lore. Godzilla has 2 kids.
Wow.
So it's like, but I don't think Godzuki is one of them.
Okay.
So it's like, all right. But I remember growing up watching it, and then as getting older, of course, we got more of the movies here in the States. And then watching the American Godzillas, the ones that were made here, it was like, oh, these are cool. You know what I mean? I do still really like what's going on. Not all the movies are great, but watching this was a fucking treat. I love this movie. I love what's going on in here. I love the social commentary that it's there and you're sitting in it, you know, because it's real. It happened. And it's like, this is really good. The effects, the acting, everything that's going on. I was like, man, I'm so glad that we finally got around to covering it and giving me more of a reason to continue to consume more Godzilla stuff.
Yeah, I had never seen this before, any of it at all. I remember not too long ago you watching it and talking about the social commentary in it and like the historical period.
Right.
I'll say that it was set in, and it hits. Like, even you saying that, I was still taken aback by it's like very sobering, and I don't know, just thinking about when this was made. I really appreciated that aspect to it because I think Godzilla is really cool, but I'm learning that I'm pretty ignorant on the lore, and I mean, especially the fact that he has a nephew. I really didn't know that. I'm delighted to learn though. But yeah, watching this original version introducing what this is, why this is, it was really a treat. I really, really enjoyed it. I was very impressed by some of the effects that they were able to pull off.
Yeah.
And this is, for me personally, I know I've already said treat, but like a double treat, the utilization of miniatures, which I know we're going to get into. I absolutely loved that. I think because it's kind of for me, I'll say a slow start. And so it's like almost little vignettes. But as it's ramping up, I'm like, oh shit, like I'm really fucking enjoying this.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really liked it. This was my first time ever watching it. I think that what they were able to accomplish is very impressive. And I think that the historical, the cultural, just all of this simmering commentary is very bold, especially for when it was made. And I really appreciate its inclusion because it was just something that the gravity of it and the way that it was handled, I just really wasn't expecting.
I absolutely agree because I mean, I don't know if it's no, I do know it's definitely my kind of ignorant point of view as far as monster movies are concerned.
Yeah.
Because you think a monster movie, you're like, okay, it's going to be a big thing that's just fucking shit up.
Yes.
And it's going to be a lot of fun and we're just going to not really think about it and just enjoy it. But this is kind of the antithesis of that.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah, Godzilla does fuck shit up.
He does do those things.
But the messaging behind it is just so deep.
Yeah.
And the social commentary is so poignant, especially for the time, but still today.
Yeah.
But it is that historical significance and the context of it that really makes this film especially special.
Yeah.
And you really the boldness to tackle this topic in 1954.
Yeah.
It's incredible. I very oddly thought that I had absolutely seen this film before. And then when I started watching it and I started writing my script for it, I realized I was completely wrong.
Yeah.
There was not one moment from this film that I recognized, even from seeing, like, you know, growing up a fan of horror.
Yeah.
I never in my life have seen Godzilla do anything. As it turns out.
All right.
Like, you know, that sounds like I'm talking shit about Godzilla, but what I'm saying is that I missed out.
Well, we've all seen him do that sweet drop kick where he floats across.
Fair. From other, yes,
Yeah.
that's true. But he has grown to like the stature of a cultural icon.
Yeah.
So many iterations, so many, like, just multimedia.
We talked about it as well on Cloverfield.
Yeah.
Just the staying power, and that was the kind of spark for that whole franchise.
He's even got his own Hollywood star.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
He does. I was reading as well. Steven Spielberg was saying that he was a massive influence on Jurassic Park. I'm saying he, like
you guys are
Godzilla
buddy.
is a person. He's retired from acting.
Yeah.
But, no, but he did. And you
Yeah.
can see it clearly.
Yeah.
For sure.
But I think what really astounded me, aside from the depth of the social commentary, was how much the effects work does hold up.
Yeah.
There are moments, of course, it's 1954,
Right.
Yeah.
where you can see how things are working or what they're using to make this appear what it is.
Right.
But there are times where they cut back and forth or they use composite shots and you're like, I don't know how you're doing this.
Yeah.
It's so impressive.
Yeah. I also think that the music is remarkable.
Yeah.
The music I absolutely adore.
Yeah.
I fucking love the music.
Throughout.
Yeah.
I think they're really able to capture so much. There are these tense moments. There's moments of such solemnity,
Yeah.
Mhm.
especially towards the end where it's like, dude, because I think that's something that's really special about the ending in particular,
Mhm.
aside from the almost moralistic, like, parable feeling.
Right.
I think that there is a choice that they make with the music that any other film would have gone a completely different way with it.
Okay.
And the choice that they made there, I feel like, is resonant because of the seriousness that they treat it with.
Yeah.
Mm.
But I just think the story is very interesting. It's compelling, and the message behind it even more so.
Yeah.
I think the only thing that doesn't work for me, there is something very interesting regarding a certain love triangle.
Right.
Yeah.
And the more it comes up, it honestly gets a little comical.
No, it's.
I agree.
It
No,
was
yeah.
straight up funny to me. But I'm like, honestly, and as millennials and up, oh my God, not even, I mean, it's behind us now too. The shit that we live through and that is going on a daily basis.
Yeah.
But it's like, I gotta, like, how am I going to get to work tomorrow? You know what I mean? Like, it is kind of like, that's real shit.
It is.
Yeah.
This looming threat is happening right outside the window, but like, what are we? You know what I mean?
But I do want to talk about the production of this film because understanding this film is very crucial to grasp the context in which it was made.
Yeah.
So I got a lot of this information from a commentary track by film historian David Callett, as well as a book called Japan's Favorite Monstar by Stephen Reifel.
Okay.
So the first thing that is important to note is that the monster film subgenre at the time, this subgenre of film wasn't entirely established yet.
Okay.
You did have sporadic films of varying success through the decades, obviously King Kong in 1933,
Right.
but the subgenre kind of had limited growth due to the limitations on special effects and the high production costs of these films.
Okay.
I bet.
So you do have that success of King Kong, but you don't really have anybody trying to emulate it because it's too expensive to attempt it.
Yeah.
But we cut to the 1950s when King Kong is re-released in theaters, and it somehow makes even more at the box office than it did on its first run.
Huh.
This ignites a passion for producers to emulate its success with ideas of their own and 20 years of improvements in special effects.
Right.
So the first attempt at this was Ray Harryhausen's The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms in 1953, which just so happened to feature a massive dinosaur-like creature who was revived and irradiated by nuclear bombs.
What?
A little interesting.
Yeah.
But that finally brings us to Japan.
Mhm.
The spring of 1954, a producer at Toho Motion Picture Company called Tomoyuki Tanaka was actually in the middle of a project called In the Shadow of Glory. And this was supposed to be a co-production between Japan and Indonesia, but due to tensions between the two countries, the project eventually fell through. So considering that this film was meant to be a major release for Toho, Tanaka was forced to scramble to come up with another idea.
Okay.
So it was on his flight home to Tokyo from Indonesia that he got the idea, and he decided that he wanted to make a monster film taking cues from the beast from 20,000 Fathoms.
Okay.
Mm.
So he was inspired by this idea of the nuclear imagery that they used, but he wanted to create a monster film that could speak to the very vivid and recent horrors of Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Yeah.
Because when you think about it, and it is, watching this film, you're like 1954. It was only 9 years prior.
Yeah.
That's astonishing.
Yeah.
I was reading about the devastation of what happened from these bombs.
Right.
And they had talked about the 300,000 civilians who were killed by these bombs, the cities themselves that were leveled. And this was all followed by years of occupation, a rewriting of a new Western-inspired constitution in Japan, and what they called basically just the complete political, economic, and cultural upheaval and uncertainty in Japanese society. This included the Japanese film industry as well, because the film industry had been used to create wartime propaganda.
Yeah.
So during this time of occupation, the film industry was heavily censored, and filmmakers were forbidden to discuss the war, the bombings, or America's role in any of it.
Wow.
So it was not until after the occupation in 1952 that films started being made that featured discussions of these topics.
Yeah.
So we're only 2 years removed from creatives being able to openly talk about it when Godzilla becomes more of a fleshed out idea.
Okay.
Mhm.
But it was also in 1954 that I read, for the country of Japan, which at the time had become a peaceful and prosperous nation once again,
Yeah.
it was caught in the middle of 2 nuclear testing programs because you had the Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
And they were literally caught in the middle because it was testing sites of both of these countries attempting to perfect their nuclear program. So all of this coincides with a nuclear test conducted by the United States on March 1st, 1954. It was an H-bomb, 750 times the power of the bombs dropped in Japan in 1945.
Oh my God.
Jeez.
And even more so, it was more powerful than they expected. And when they dropped the bomb, I think it was in the Marshall Islands, it sent a plume of radioactive ash raining over a 7,000 square mile area.
Jeez.
They had told Japanese citizens to steer clear of the island at the time, but the message did not reach a fishing boat that went out to catch tuna.
Oh, no.
So this boat was only 100 miles east of the drop site, and they had all of this radioactive ash rain down upon them.
Fuck.
So this was heavily covered in the Japanese newspapers. And it was actually 6 months later, one of the radio operators of the ship, Aikichi Kobayama, passed away from this incident.
Of course.
And his last words were, "Please make sure that I'm the last victim of the nuclear bomb."
That's devastating.
Yeah.
So as I said, this happened in March. The story makes the papers in Japan. And it was this story in the newspaper that Tanaka, the producer, took to the top brass at Toho to sell the idea of the film Godzilla.
Okay.
Because he said that it was more pertinent than ever that they explore this.
Yeah.
So back on the film front, the closest that Japan had come to a successful monster film was actually the re-release of King Kong in 1952. It made a lot of money in Japan, and the difficulty was that Toho had never tried their hand at a monster film, but they had tried a lot of special effects-filled war films, which featured the work of Eijo Tsuburaya. So, given the proper introductions from the brass at Toho, Tanaka met with Tsuburaya to see if the idea was even feasible, and after these discussions, the film was finally greenlit. Tanaka initially wanted to bring in the director from the canceled film that he had previously been working on, but after that film was canceled, that director went on to another project, and so they decided to go with Ishirō Honda, who actually had experience working with Tsuburaya on a few of those war films that I mentioned.
Oh, okay.
So the initial title for Godzilla was going to be The Giant Monster from 2,000 Miles Beneath the Sea.
All right. Not
It's a
as
mouthful.
Yeah,
but-
not as snappy. I will say that.
This was shortened at the time to Project G.
Okay.
All right.
And they actually gave it classified status and kept it top secret and didn't really let anything leak about it at all.
Oh, wow.
But in order to give the film credibility and commercial appeal, because they knew they were going to spend a lot of money on making it, they took cues from American filmmakers who had used the stories of famous science fiction and horror writers.
Yeah.
And so they brought in sci-fi horror novelist Shigeru Kayama to write the story.
Okay.
And in the meantime, they went through several iterations of the creature before landing on the design that we know and love today.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you'll have a lot on that later.
I have a few things.
There were discussions of it at first being an octopus, like a giant octopus. And then there were just different ideas coming about it, different creatures like kind of combined. And then we eventually get to Godzilla.
Right.
But the story of the film was eventually fleshed out properly by Takeo Murata, the screenwriter, and Honda himself over the course of only 3 weeks.
Oh, wow.
And they went to a hotel and just worked on it, and they changed a lot of things and kind of even dynamics of characters, and they really put their stamp on it.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that was important for Honda was actually a prisoner of war during World War II.
Oh my God.
And when the bombs were dropped in Japan, he only heard news of it later. And when he returned to Japan, he firsthand saw the devastation of these bombs.
Wow.
And this is what he wanted to capture with this film, to show the destruction of what this kind of thing does.
Yeah.
But the filming of this picture took place at the beginning of August of 1954, and it required an absurd amount of coordination because they divided it into 3 photography teams.
Okay.
You had one group handling dramatic scenes, one group handling special effects, and then you had the composite team that put it all together.
Damn.
But thankfully, in pre-production, they carefully planned each and every shot with the help of incredibly detailed storyboard artists, which was not something that was common in Japanese filmmaking, but because of Godzilla, became the standard.
Okay.
Wow.
And before the film even was released, they thought of an idea to promote it. And what they did was Toho created an 11-part radio play based on the screenplay. And they also sought to create an air of mystery around the film, even banning reporters from the set. And so all you really have to go on, I think there were some images of Godzilla that were released and this radio play.
Okay.
And so you're just building this anticipation for it.
Yeah.
But all told, it took 122 days of production.
Damn.
And it was the equivalent of about $900,000 of a production budget, which at the time was 30 times the cost of an average Japanese film.
Oh my God.
Jeez.
Yeah. So it was released. It was not well received initially by critics.
Really?
Yeah. And Honda even talked about it, and he had said that it was kind of difficult to see because of all the work that they put into it.
Yeah.
But the plus side of it is that it performed incredibly well at the box office.
Yeah.
And as I said, Godzilla became a cultural icon.
Yeah.
And as someone who's not a big fan of monster films in general, but watching Godzilla, you really can't help but be amazed at the thoughtfulness of it, the dedication, the ingenuity, and the message behind everything that's here.
Yeah.
And Tanaka had said in many interviews that the theme of the film from the very beginning was capturing the terror of the bomb.
Yeah.
He said mankind had created the bomb, and now nature was going to take revenge on mankind. And that's the entire premise of this film, where it is such a depth of intention that went into this film that you see the staying power it has and how poignant this message will honestly, unfortunately, be forever.
Yeah.
Now, before we attack this film, we would like to issue a warning for spoilers. Pod Mortem is a very in-depth podcast, and in thoroughly discussing horror films, we have no choice but to spoil a thing or two. If you don't wish to be spoiled, please go watch the film, then come back and enjoy the show. If you've already seen the film or don't care about spoilers, let's begin our rampage. So the film begins with rhythmic crashes like heavy, plodding steps, eventually joined by an unsettling and distorted screech as the title rises in white text against a black background. Godzilla. So the title.
Mm-hmm.
I heard 3 different stories as far as how this title became the title of the film.
Okay.
The first story I heard was they had initially wanted this creature to be a mix of a gorilla and a whale.
Huh.
And so it was taking the Japanese words for both of those animals and combining them.
Okay.
So Kujira, which is the whale, and then the gorilla, and you have Gojira.
Yeah.
And that eventually translates to Godzilla when it comes to America.
Mm-hmm.
The other story that I heard is that nickname, Gojira, was a word used to describe a very large person on the crew. And they called him that because he was like the combination of a gorilla
Okay.
and a whale.
Okay.
And then I heard from Ishirō Honda's widow. She had said that those stories are not true. And that it was very obvious that everybody sat around at a table together and came up with it after great debate and conversation and planning.
Yeah.
All right.
And so it's Godzilla. But as the opening credits continue in an upward crawl, a roar carves through the darkness, but quickly gives way to the tense and sawing strings of the main theme. So this score, as we said, is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that it sets the tone immediately for what we're about to see and the tension that this track in particular creates.
Oh, yeah.
And you had said in further films it's referenced.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. -1 does it perfect. I was
Really?
like, God damn. The score for this gave me anxiety right away. I was like,
Yeah.
is Godzilla outside? I was like, what the fuck? I was like, am I supposed to be doing something? Is somebody watching me? I was like, I don't know how to feel. I just know I feel like something bad is coming or happening or something. It just it gave me a feeling of something big is going to happen or something's wrong.
I had wanted to talk about the composer and these compositions.
Yeah.
The composer was a guy called Akira Ifukube, and he was actually one of Japan's foremost classical composers, according to that historian David Callett.
Oh, okay.
And this was fascinating to me, but initially he had never studied music professionally because of his father's opposition to it, and was a self-taught musician to start.
Oh,
wow.
okay.
So his first ever orchestral piece actually won a competition that was headed by the Russian composer Alexander Sherepnin.
Okay.
And he was able to study under Sherepnin after this victory.
Oh, all right.
And they had mentioned that he spent a lot of time during the war composing nationalistic themes. But afterwards, a friend of his, Fumio Hayasaka, got a job writing compositions for the films of Akira Kurosawa.
Oh.
And so after seeing his friend do this, it inspired him to get into the field of film compositions himself.
Okay.
And it was very interesting when he was given the job for Godzilla. As I had said, everything was so secretive.
Mm-hmm.
And the head of the special effects, Tsuburaya, he didn't want anyone to know what anything looked like.
Okay.
Because he didn't want anything to leak and he didn't want anybody talking about it.
Yeah.
And so what would happen is he would show the rough cut of the film, and then when it came time for special effects, it would cut to black, and Tsuburaya would act it out for the composer. And so this is all he had to go on to score the film.
That's
Okay.
amazing.
And yet he was somehow able to create this just impactful and incredibly fitting composition up top
Yeah.
and throughout.
Mm-hmm.
But this roar,
Yes, please.
it was also created by Ifukube.
Okay.
And what he did was he took a double bass and he loosened the strings, then rubbed a leather glove against the detuned strings. And after he did this, he applied an echo to it and played it back at a slower speed.
Okay.
I love it so much.
It's
Yeah.
fantastic, and it's striking every time you hear it.
Yes. That I'm like even trying to imagine that.
I know.
Yeah.
I would
How
love...
do you think of that?
I don't know. And they were shocked too because they gave him this assignment of working on a little bit of the sound design as well. And he just took to it immediately.
Yeah.
And ends up creating one of the most iconic sounds ever made.
That's crazy because I'll be honest, hearing it, me personally, I would think that's somebody's pet or that's a wild animal that they, mixed around and messed with it and added other noises, or it's like a creaky door or something and they're like, we'll just change it.
Yeah.
But I mean, because it's, you hear that every day. If the oil or the door needs a little oil or WD-40 or something. So it doesn't make that noise. But it's like, you know what? If I record that, slow it down, whatever. But to get a bass and like, I need to loosen this string.
Yeah.
And then, what would a leather glove sound like? It's like, what the hell?
It's like, where does that come from?
Yeah.
But it is iconic.
Mm-hmm.
And even this opening, you're like, he's just fucking going off back there.
Yeah. One thing that did make me laugh is there was like initially some kind of pushback because a lot of people were saying, because Godzilla's reptilian.
Right.
They're like, reptiles don't have vocal cords, so
I
how
don't
are they
care.
Dude, that's what Honda said. He goes, we've never seen anything like this before.
Yeah.
I don't give a fuck.
He's like, he can have whatever we want. But we fade in somewhere out on the Pacific Ocean, the waves rippling as the Aikomaru, a freighter ship, sails through unending waters. On the deck of the ship itself, the crew passes the time gathered in fractured groups of meals and conversations, with the accompaniment of a small band of musicians who offer a peaceful melody of acoustic guitar and harmonica. But suddenly, something bursts loudly off the port side of the ship, gaining the attention and concern of all the crew members, the uncredited guitarist of the band articulating everyone's collective confusion when he asks, "What was that?" They all rush from their seats to peer out into the water, and the men watch as a blinding white light slowly spreads beneath the surface of the ocean, rising upward in a flash, causing them to shield their eyes from its brightness as they shriek and collapse to the deck floor. As the score grows frenzied, a foul wind reaches the Aikomaru, howling and bringing a terrifying turbulence to the once peaceful vessel, until we cut abruptly to a shot of the ship far off in the ocean, now reduced to smoldering wreckage, a raging fire overtaking it and belching black smoke into the sky. But inside the ship, a communications officer played by Yu Fujiki frantically sends out a distress signal in Morse code, his uncredited colleague attempting to do the same before the ship finally sinks. Water rushing violently into the cabin through the porthole windows that line the ship's wall. But we glide from the lost ship to a large communication tower belonging to the Coast Guard, which receives the message. We're then taken inside the command center, where rows of Coast Guard officers sit, manning radios and monitoring communication devices, and we eventually press in on a piece of machinery parked in front of one of the uncredited officers. As he adjusts the dial in front of him, the distress frequency from the Aikomaru arrives, alerting the proper authorities of its tragic fate. As the officer listens in on the rhythmic and coded beeping of the message, the last remnants of the Aikomaru slowly descend into the depths of the Pacific.
Godzilla's already acting a fool.
Yeah.
Already, like right out the gate.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe we opened with that.
Yeah.
They had talked about it, historically speaking, that poor, ill-fated ship in real life that witnessed that bomb testing.
Yeah.
That's exactly what they saw. They saw a flash of light 100 miles away.
Jeez.
And it was very similar to what they tried to capture here.
Right.
A nightmare.
Yeah.
But we cut to the offices of South Seas Salvage, where a black telephone rings incessantly on the corner of a desk, sunlight pouring through the blinds of a nearby window. Hideto Ogata, played by Akira Takarada, makes his way into the office, drying his wet hair with a towel as he reaches for the phone.
I do apologize, I'm a little under the weather, but Akira Takarada, he also is in Mothra versus Godzilla.
Really?
Oh.
Yeah, that was from 1964. He also did, and I was like, I didn't even know, Godzilla Battle Royal in 2014. I was like, that sounds very interesting.
So 60 years later?
Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
And I threw this in just for anybody else who loves Kingdom Hearts. He also was the voice of Jafar on all the Kingdom Hearts games.
Really?
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah.
One thing I was just kind of staggered by was just how many Godzilla films there are.
Yeah.
I was looking, and I think that it's a total of 38.
What?
Yeah.
Is that counting now? I think there's 5 American ones as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was just like, wow.
Good
Yeah.
Lord.
So our coverage of them, it's going to be a little wild.
Yeah.
We might be bouncing around.
Yeah.
But upon answering the phone, Ogata appears somewhat unsettled by the news he receives. But beside him, Emiko Yamane, played by Momoko Kochi, approaches him quietly in concern.
Momoko Kochi, Emiko. It looks like she did Godzilla versus Destroyer in '95.
Wow.
Yeah. She was also, and I seen too, a lot of the stuff she was in really had good ratings on there. It looks like she was also in a movie called A Rainbow Plays in My Heart from '57 and The Mysterians from '57 as well.
Oh.
And these all had really high ratings on IMDb. I was like, I'm very interested to go back and just kind of check these out on my own.
Yeah.
For sure. But Ogata assures the voice on the other end that he'll be there soon. And after they hang up, he stares pensively at the receiver in his hand before shifting his focus to Emiko. He immediately apologizes to her, and we see her through the slices of light between the blinds as she asks him if he received news of an accident. Ogata retrieves his towel from the desk, wiping his arms as he shares that it was actually an SOS from one of their boats, and that he's been summoned to the Coast Guard's office. Emiko breathes a lamentful sigh as Ogata clutches a flyer and a ticket in his hands, advertising a concert for the Budapest String Quartet. Their plans for the evening sunk by Ogata's unexpected assignment, he apologizes again to Emiko, suggesting that she should still go and she could make it in time if she hurries.
That's very thoughtful of him to be like, look, I do got to go, just go.
Uh-huh.
But I don't think Ogata has any kind of idea what he's fixing to go into.
He's like, it's work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think I could attend if you're planned in your mind, like you two are going together to a string quartet. I can't sit there alone.
Sure you can.
Really?
He doesn't want to ruin her night.
Well, I would give Jules the tickets to go, but if Jules gave me the tickets to go, I wouldn't.
And if Jules went, you'd be like, I can't believe you went.
No. It's like, we're supposed to go together. Just crying all night. No, I would want them to go.
Yeah.
But Emiko reluctantly takes the tickets, folding it as she notes her disappointment, but she understands that work is work. Ogata puts a comforting hand on her shoulder as he guides her to the door, reminding her to hurry as he snags his shirt and cap from a nearby rack and they exit the office together.
So at this point, I'm like, first of all, I hope she has a good time.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because I feel like things are going to get pretty dicey pretty soon.
Yeah.
But I'm like, what a sweet, thoughtful couple.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking right now.
Yeah.
But at the office of the Coast Guard, we spy a map of the island country of Japan, populous cities marked and labeled in the dark mass of the land, markers of ships placed in expansive waters of the Japan Sea above and the Pacific Ocean below. A voice crackles over a nearby radio announcing, the Aikomaru, a 7,500-ton freighter belonging to South Seas Shipping, lost contact on August 13th at 19:05 hours, latitude 24 degrees north, longitude 141.2 degrees east. Cause of loss of communication unknown.
So is this a second ship?
This is the first ship.
The first one. Okay.
I was a little like, we have the people on the ship that saw what happened. It's like they didn't say there was this giant flash of light.
Yeah.
And they were like, I don't know. Dude.
They're just like, we're sinking.
Yeah.
And that was it. But as the voice on the radio continues, ordering patrol vessels in regions 3 and 4 to stand by to deploy, the camera pulls back to reveal a group of uncredited Coast Guard officers surrounding a small table in front of the map of Japan, frantically scribbling notes, making measurements with compass calipers on a smaller map that lies at the center of the table, and engaging in pressing and pertinent ponderings of policy. The door at the other end of the room is opened for Ogata, as well as the president of the shipping company, played by Teranosuke Ogawa. Uncredited Coast Guard officers keep the members of the general public at bay in the doorway as they attempt to force their way into the room, their questions and concerns unanswered as Ogata and the president force their way through the crowd and enter the room, the door closed behind them with great effort. A thin, uncredited Coast Guard officer bows to the president as he makes his way to the other side of the table, with Ogata at his side. The president thanks the men for all their efforts, inquiring what could have caused this. The thin officer admits that they don't know, comparing it to when the Myojin-sho volcano erupted. He shares that they received an SOS, and then suddenly, the connection went dead. Oh yeah, I guess it wasn't voice, it was just Morse code. Although, I mean...
Well, you could type it out.
Yeah. It's like light, stop, water, stop. I mean...
Creature,
yeah.
stop. But worry washes over the face of the president as a second uncredited officer rises from his seat next to the thin officer. He assures the president that a second ship, the Bingo Maru, is approaching the area and should definitely find something. Ogata then walks the president over to the large map of Japan behind the table, directing his attention to where the Bingo Maru is currently sailing towards the last known location of the Aiko Maru. And suddenly, we're there, watching as the Bingo Maru sails sternly through the dark waters, its foghorn blaring into the night. But just as it reaches where the first ship met its end, something glows brightly beneath the surface of the ocean, bubbling upward. Just as the ship reaches the luminous anomaly in the deep, it immediately and shockingly bursts into flames, the crumbling frame of the structure sinking to the accompaniment of somberly dramatic descendants in the score.
There it is.
Yeah.
I was like, let's not send any more ships here.
Yeah.
That's number one.
He don't give no fucks.
No.
Coming to my porch, I'm gonna shoot you with
That's
whatever's
it.
going on.
Yeah.
And it was honestly wild that it was like 1 second and then it's just like, oh, it's just a skeleton ship now.
Yeah.
It was so fast. But we return to the office of the Coast Guard, where Hagiwara, played by Sachio Sakai, sits at a table on the telephone, surrounded by a sea of other reporters as he scribbles information onto his pad. He confirms that in the exact same location, 2 freighters owned by the South Seas Shipping Company, the Aiko Maru and the Bingo Maru, have been lost, the cause of which is still unknown. The camera pulls back from their makeshift bullpen to reveal the president seated with Ogata and his colleagues amongst the Coast Guard officers, dabbing sweat from his forehead with a towel. But a crowd of citizens surround an uncredited officer, a woman stepping through the fray to urgently plead with him for any information about survivors. To her and the crowd's dismay, the officer laments that they won't have any news until the morning, but he assures the masses that a helicopter and 2 ships are headed to the site now. I was like, no!
Yeah.
Let's learn.
Yeah.
Let's learn.
But as the president approaches the officer and stands at his side, an older man in the crowd responds in confusion that the Coast Guard only plans to send 2 ships, but the officer assures him that the search party isn't limited to those 2 ships alone, and that they plan to devote all of their resources to the search. We then get a quick shot of the Coast Guard officers hard at work in the command center, before returning to the wreckage at sea, where 3 sailors cling to a scrap of wood from the destroyed ship, splashing earnestly as they shout for help. They slowly float toward a nearby fishing boat, the uncredited fishermen tossing ropes into the water, offering calm words of comfort and assuring their rescue as the sailors reach out and are pulled to safety. We star wipe to find the 2.
Get used to it.
Yeah. There's a lot of wipes in this film.
There is.
But we find 2 of the sailors laying prone as the fishermen tend to them, while the 3rd sailor, Masaji Yamada, played by Rin Yamamoto, rests in the arms of one of the other fishermen, breathlessly explaining the ordeal that they all suffered. With bewildered certainty, Masaji recounts that the sea just exploded. He then closes his eyes and attempts to catch his breath as the fishermen exchange glances of disbelief.
Can you provide a little more clarification before you lose consciousness?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Stay here for just a minute.
what the fuck you mean the sea exploded?
Yeah.
There's got to be more coming with that.
And how far are we from those previous
Oh, yeah.
explosions? We need to get the fuck
Yeah.
out of here. But back at the Coast Guard office the next morning, the thin officer addresses the gathered members of the public, revealing that 3 survivors were rescued by a fishing boat and they're being taken to the nearby Odo Island. He says that afterward, the Coast Guard will dispatch a patrol boat to retrieve the men. A woman leans forward from a sea of concerned faces, asking if the rescued sailors are from the Aiko Maru or the Bingo Maru, but the Coast Guard states simply that they're still conducting their investigation. As the clamors of the crowd grow cacophonous, the president, who's seated nearby, rejoices that at least 3 men survived, and he expresses hope that they can figure out what caused this disaster. But when an officer enters the room from the main office and whispers to the thin officer that they have the names of the rescued sailors, the crowd rushes for the door and has to be held at bay as the president, Ogata, and their colleagues push past everyone in their way to re-enter the main office. They stand pensive in anticipation, crowding around the large table underneath the map of Japan on the wall as the second officer from earlier silently reads through a report clutched in his hand. Ogata, like everyone else, is curious as to what it says, and the officer initially can only mutter that it's incredible, utterly incredible, before revealing that the fishing boat has met the same fate as the other 2 vessels.
We're done.
Yeah.
It's done.
I think now it's like, okay, for sure, no more boats.
No.
No
No more boats, period.
And that's not incredible.
No.
Maybe my definition of the term is different, but
Yeah, not my choice of words. But
No.
But back outside, Hagiwara places an urgent call, reaching a Mr. Yamane and reporting that the fishing boat sank as well, bringing the count to 3 ships lost in the exact same location. Just then, the public pushes through the door to the Coast Guard office, and as they're held back by 2 officers, they demand to know what's going on. They frustratedly plead to know what happened to the fishing boat and if it sent a signal before it disappeared. But the officers merely push them back into the lobby, promising to make an announcement soon and asking them to just be patient. We fade to a speculative newspaper headline accompanied by low piano keys in the score, which reads, "Naval Mines? Undersea Volcano?" We then press in on another article with the succinct but accurate header, "Ship sinks mysteriously at sea. No hope of survivors."
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we then cut to the beach of Odo Island, dozens of villagers dotting the sands as the tide rises lowly at the shore. So Odo Island is a fictional place, but it was actually filmed at the Shima Peninsula in Japan.
Okay.
Oh.
Because we get a lot of really beautiful wide shots.
Yeah.
And it's just a gorgeous sight to behold.
Mm-hmm.
But the villagers gaze into the vast waters, and in a wide shot, like I just said, we see the array of houses lining the coast, dwarfed by the stark sea surrounding the island. Strings hum wearily in the score as we find the old fisherman, played by Kokuten Kodo, sat in front of his home with Shinkichi Yamada, played by Toyoaki Suzuki. Shinkichi sits forlorn as the old fisherman raspily remarks that no matter how you slice it, the situation is serious. It's like, I'm glad.
Really?
Yeah.
What a hot take.
Yeah. But as the smoke rises from the cigarette held in the old fisherman's fingers, Shinkichi nods in agreement at his assessment. But suddenly, Shinkichi spots something out in the sea, rising urgently to his feet, joined by the old fisherman who wipes at his eyes. The young man points out into the distance, where he sees a raft floating toward the shore. The old fisherman cups his hands to shout to all the people gathered on the beach, alerting them of the incoming raft. Shinkichi joins in the chorus as all of the beachgoers rise from their sandy seats to peer out into the water. They rush closer to the shore when they see the raft slowly floating toward the island, and a few uncredited men swim out into the sea to bring it in. A fire is assembled and fed on the beach as Xing-Chi hurriedly makes his way down through shrubbery as he hears the cries of his countrymen at the shore. They shout, "It's Masaji!" Xing-Chi finally makes it to the shore, rushing to the water as he calls out to his rescued brother, pushing through the crowd gathered around the rescued raft to approach him. Masaji lies face down, his eyes opened but unresponsive, as Xing-Chi pleads through tears for his brother to hang on. His older brother is lifted from the raft, cradled and slapped feverishly until he slowly regains consciousness. I do have to say I understand why people do this in movies and shit, but this is not how I want to wake up.
No.
Yeah.
Like, ever.
Not at all.
Not only that, he slaps him a few times. It's like, dude, he just came in on a raft.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
something
Give
bad
him
happened.
a second.
Yeah.
Or, like, get him something to drink.
Something.
Just beat the hell out of him.
But Masaji murmurs lowly, "It got us. Our boat, too," before he slips back into unconsciousness against the protests of his brother and the concerned crowd who plead to know more about what happened.
Again, a little clarification while you're conscious, please.
He has no time for like anything. He's been through a lot, though.
True.
Yeah.
And he's like, you guys keep beating the shit out of me.
I don't want to tell you anything.
He probably was awake, and then that last slap.
It took him out.
Like, great. But we return to the shoreline of Odo Island the next morning, fishing boats covering the coast as they return from their morning expedition. Uncredited fishermen lament their fruitless endeavor, tossing the empty nets from their boats and onto the sand, remarking that it's never been this bad before. But through the crowd, the old fisherman stands, overlooking the unwinding of nets, as a startling realization finds him, and he croaks, "I knew it. It must be Godzilla."
Was anybody else very surprised by this?
Yes.
Very much so.
Yeah. So you guys know he's there?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was unaware that this is going to be kind of like a tradition or folklore.
Right.
Yeah.
I kind of thought that it would be a thing that they see and they eventually name later.
Exactly.
I didn't know there was a history.
Yeah, neither did I.
But a woman in the crowd makes light of his certainty, asking, "Godzilla again, Pops?" before reminding him that there's no such thing nowadays. Nowadays?
Yeah.
That's so whatever.
Yeah.
That's so last year, Pops.
Yeah, hitting the pops. Come on.
Yeah, that's too far.
Yeah.
And also, I really think that we should be listening to this guy.
Yeah, dude. But as scattered laughter is heard among the crowd, the old fisherman barks, "If you ridicule our traditions, I'll feed you stupid cows to Godzilla."
He took that personally.
Yeah.
He did. I was also shocked by that.
Extremely.
He'll personally feed. Like, God damn.
You know him. Why don't you tell him to stop?
Yeah.
He's trying to curry favor.
After this threat, no one is laughing any longer. But their attention is diverted from the matters on the land when up above, a helicopter suddenly appears through the trees, its blades chopping through the air as it makes a slow descent and landing on Odo Island. Flanked by members of the Coast Guard, out of the helicopter steps Hagiwara, with a bag on his shoulder and a camera clutched in his hand as he surveys the area. We star-wipe to Hagiwara interviewing the recovered Masaji, who stands outside among his cattle, sipping a cup of tea, as Hagiwara jots notes down onto a pad. I was kind of surprised to see him recovered so fast.
Yeah.
And to kind of just cut to it being back to where he's just up and about.
Yeah.
But Masaji states that there's definitely some living thing going crazy down there in the ocean. That's an exact quote.
Yeah.
Reminded me of Fargo.
Yes.
But he pours his tea onto the ground as he acknowledges that this is why the fishermen have come up empty lately. Hagiwara challenges that a creature that big in the ocean, but he's promptly interrupted by a frustrated Masaji, who expresses that this is why he didn't want to say anything at all. Xing-Chi approaches the men, standing between them, as his brother insists that he's telling the truth, but nobody believes him. Masaji then ends the interview abruptly, urging his brother to leave with him as Hagiwara calls after them with more questions. I would think, especially with the fact that Shing-Chi was hanging out with the old fisherman, that Masaji would go talk to him because he seems to know at least something about it.
Yeah.
And if nobody else believes him, I think this old fisherman would.
Right?
But they never have a conversation.
No.
Yeah.
But later that night, the villagers gather around a traditional ceremony on Odo Island. 6 dancers moving in unison, wearing ornate ceremonial masks and robes. As smoke rises from small surrounding fires, drums pound rhythmically, gongs crash around them, and a Shinaboa flute sounds a serene melody.
This looks so cool.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I was immediately terrified for them.
Yes,
Yeah.
I thought something was bound to happen.
Yeah.
I did too. I was like, they're, doing the ceremony and they're all there. Please don't let anything bad happen.
After
Yeah.
everything that's happened so far, it's like we can't have just a nice moment.
Of course not. I did read that this was a real ceremony conducted by the villagers that lived on the island.
Oh, okay.
And they were meant to be evoking the good spirits to protect them from what was happening.
Okay.
And Ifukube, the composer, actually composed this song, and it was meant to mirror the traditional Kagura folk dance that they were doing in the film.
Oh, okay.
But seated in the crowd in front of Shing-Chi and right next to the old fisherman is Hagiwara, who interviews the old man about the legend of Godzilla.
Okay.
The old fisherman explains that Godzilla is a giant, terrifying monster, and he reveals that once he eats all the fish in the sea, he'll come ashore and eat the people next.
And the fish are gone.
Yeah,
Oh, fuck.
it's worrisome.
Yeah.
Which is even more messed up that the old fisherman is threatening people with Godzilla.
He's like,
eating
oh no,
them.
he's got keep running that fucking mouth.
I know how it works.
Yeah. But you're here too, man.
Yeah, that's true.
No, he's like, I'm on your side. I'm playing both sides.
He always comes out on top.
Yeah.
But Hagiwara nods his head as he listens, his eyes focused on the ceremonial dance, as the old fisherman continues that in the old days, if the catch was poor for a long time, they'd offer a young girl as a sacrifice, sending her drifting into the middle of the ocean. But now, this dance is all that's left of that sacrificial ritual.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love how we're just casually mentioning. He's like, now back in the day. It's like,
Yeah.
What's wild to me is that Hagiwara breezes right past that and he just goes, Godzilla, huh?
he's like, well, we all know that we did that.
But the old fisherman confirms the name. But as the dancers continue, shrouded in their masks, and move methodically to the music, a foul wind blows over the nearby fires, and we soon see a storm reaching Odo Island, its trees swaying defenseless from its impending ferocity. And later that night, waves crash violently against the rocks, and trees are uprooted from unyielding winds. But inside the Yamada home, Masaji lies awake in bed, preoccupied and pensive as he runs his fingers through his hair. But when the storm grows more powerful outside, it causes Masaji to lurch up, and in their nearby beds, Shing-Chi awakens, as does Kuni Yamada, their mother, played by Tsuruko Mano. Dust and debris rain down from the ceiling as the entire structure of their home begins to sway from the forceful winds. Against the protests of his mother and brother, Shing-Chi rushes for the front door, sliding it open and braving the storm to exit their home. This shocked me.
What the hell are you doing?
Not a word even.
Gotta go.
Yeah, later, guys. It's like, dude.
He had to pee.
But within a matter of seconds, Shing-Chi's screams echo through the night as he cries for his brother. But Masaji just sinks backwards to cradle his mother on the floor. Again, he was out there for 2 seconds. He's like, bad idea. Yeah. It's really coming down.
It was a bad idea.
But mother and son cower together as their home is destroyed. The walls give way, rainwater pouring in through flashes of light, the clatter of thunder, and dramatic music rising in the score as the ceiling crashes down from the immensity of the storm. Outside, Shing-Chi crumbles to the ground, clutching the stones of the pathway leading to his home, only able to watch in horror and bellow a mournful cry for his mother and brother as their home collapses on top of them. Villagers surround him as he screams, rain soaking them all. This made me laugh out loud, and it's a terrible and tragic scene.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But the villagers who find him, they have a clear view of what's happening. But they say, Shang-Chi, what is it?
Look!
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know what else to tell you.
It's raining really bad.
Yeah, it's
I'm
really upsetting me.
terrified of the rain. But as the group of villagers and Shang-Chi march against the storm in search of shelter, waves crash high against the coastal homes of Odo Island, and we watch as the strength of the storm grows ever more severe, toppling over the helicopter that Hagiwara and the Coast Guard arrived in. The music reaches a dramatic crescendo, and we fade to black. Again, and I know we'll talk about it a little bit more later, but the switch from real, actual-sized structures to miniatures to sets to on location, it's just fantastic work.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
But sometime later, in the light of day, we watch as a large bus parks just outside of the National Diet Building in Tokyo, a banner on its side reading, Odo Island Disaster Petition Group. As villagers pour out of the bus, they're swarmed by clamoring journalists and the flashing bulbs of a series of photographers. Inside a meeting hall and underneath ornate chandeliers, the members of parliament are gathered to hear the testimony of the survivors of the recent disaster on Odo Island. The chairman of the Diet Committee, played by Hiroshi Hayashi, calls to order, addressing parliamentarian Oyama, played by Ishirō Honda, and seeking the testimony of Inada, the mayor of Odo Island, played by Kaji Sakakida. After noting the destruction of 17 homes and the loss of 9 lives, Inada itemizes the loss of livestock, including the deaths of 12 cows and 8 pigs. We then star wipe to find Shang-Chi standing in place of Mayor Inada at the microphone, dressed all in black as he addresses the parliamentarians, assuring them that it's the truth and admitting that though it was hard to see in the dark, whatever did this to them was definitely alive. Once again, star wiping, we find Hagiwara standing at the microphone, having survived the destruction and sharing that though it defies common sense, the more he thinks about it, the more he's convinced that this devastation wasn't caused by a typhoon. He's certain that the damage to the houses and the helicopter suggests that they were crushed from above.
How scary is that? I don't know what it is, but it was alive.
Yeah.
And even if you don't believe him, the tiniest chance that he's telling the truth, what the fuck is that? What does it mean?
Beyond frightening.
Yeah. I will say from what we saw, the helicopter did kind of just topple over from the wind.
Yeah.
So I guess maybe Godzilla showed up later and was just fucking shit up. But I do wonder. I'm not buying it yet, but I know he's telling the truth.
Right.
But I think just as well, I mean, what the old fisherman was saying, I think that this would lend credence to everything.
Right.
And if I was disbelieving before.
Yeah.
Well, not only that, if he's saying that it was like not a tradition, but like they know the old ways or whatever. Were anybody else older being like, no, he's right.
Yeah, that's true. Everybody else was kind of making fun of him.
Yeah.
But as Hagiwara bows and steps away from the microphone, the chairman suggests that before they conclude the meeting, they should hear the testimony of Professor Kyoye Yamane, a paleontologist played by Takashi Shimura.
Now, Takashi Shimura, he is also in Godzilla Raids Again from 1955.
Oh, wow.
That's cool.
That's the sequel, right?
Right. I do want to add that looking into Shimura's stuff, he's been acting since the early 30s.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, man, there's so much here.
They had mentioned on commentary that he had featured either starring or co-starring in a lot of Kurosawa films.
Okay.
Oh.
And it's interesting that the composer is connected to Kurosawa. I read that Honda, the director, was the neighbor and like best friend of Kurosawa as well.
Yeah.
And he wrote a bunch of his films. He was an assistant director on a ton of them.
Damn.
So it's like really, really cool to see just how connected all of these filmmakers are.
Yeah.
But as Yamane approaches the microphone, the gathered members of parliament applaud him, demonstrating Yamane to be a man of great renown. As he stands at the microphone, he confesses that he's a bit embarrassed to be testifying before he's had the chance to personally inspect the disaster scene, and as he nervously tucks his tie behind the lapels of his suit jacket, he recalls, as those in attendance well know, large footprints discovered in the Himalayas, thought to have been created by a snowman, a mystery that is yet to be solved.
I really liked that little addition of the, what would we like, cryptid?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But he states furthermore that there are sealed cavities deep in the ocean, and he wonders what secrets they may conceal. Yamane then recommends forming an emergency research team to investigate the matter, a suggestion that is promptly applauded by the parliamentarians. So I guess we don't need to vote. It's
Yeah. Everyone's like, yeah.
hell yes. But we fade immediately to the departure of a research vessel to Odo Island, which is given a proper send-off in front of the enthusiastic public to the sound of a live band, with streamers stretching between the crowd and the ship. One man, Dr. Daisuke Serizawa, played by Akishiko Hirata, stands stoically, holding one of the streamers, an eye patch covering his right eye as he peers through a pair of sunglasses at the center of the crew, where Emiko waves a jovial goodbye to him while standing next to her father, Serizawa's colleague, Dr. Yamane, promising that she'll see him soon. Ogata stands between the father and daughter in his Coast Guard uniform, smiling nervously as Serizawa just stares stone-faced at the departing vessel.
I'm sure she's like, did I fuck up by getting on this boat?
Well, she's giving such an enthusiastic goodbye, and he's like, just like,
Yeah. No expression.
Yeah.
no.
Nothing. But it's clear he's going to be the badass of the film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So our badass, Hakichiko Hirata, he was also in Magma Man from 73, Son of Godzilla from 67, and Terror of Mecha Godzilla in 75. So he's no stranger to Godzilla.
Yeah. I will say his performance is probably my favorite in the film.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
great.
I feel like it is very nuanced and very understated.
Yeah.
He's brooding for so much of it.
Yeah.
I was really, really shocked. I heard on commentary that he was originally meant to play Ogata,
Huh.
and Akira Takarada was going to play Serizawa.
What?
Really?
Yes, but they were swapped at the last minute.
Good.
Yeah.
It fits so much better.
It does.
And it makes a lot more sense. But the ship sails onward across the ocean, and we find Ogata and Emiko standing together on the deck, gazing out to the water. Ogata shares his surprise at seeing Serizawa there earlier to send them off, noting that he rarely leaves his lab. He wonders if it was a final farewell. Emiko asks what he means by this.
Yes, what
Yeah.
do you mean?
But rather than answer her question, Ogata just steps over toward a pair of binoculars, looking through them thoughtfully.
I'm glad she went to that symphony with her.
He then returns his gaze to Emiko, assuring her that they'll avoid dangerous waters, but notes that anything could happen before walking away from her. I was like, is he talking about their affair or Godzilla?
Anything.
Yeah. Either way, dude, don't do that.
No.
No. Left alone, Emiko glances down to the rippling ocean waves below them, their movement rhythmic and for the time being, peaceful. But the research team arrives on Odo Island, a solo woodwind howling solemnly in the score as they survey the damage, and journalists, including Hagiwara, capture photographs of crumbled structures and debris. Professor Tanabe, played by Fuyuki Murakami, wears a plastic covering over his clothes as he scans the area with a Geiger counter, encountering a troubling reading when he tests near a well. He alerts the surrounding villagers not to use this well for the time being, as doing so would be dangerous. The villagers murmur their worries to each other, wondering what they're supposed to do without access to this well. But Ogata trails behind Tanabe, noting that if there were radioactive fallout, the wells on the other side of the island would be affected too. Tanabe, taking off a pair of thick, dark gloves, confirms this and wonders why they're only picking up radiation here then, and he's confounded that it doesn't make any sense. As Ogata and Tanabe walk off together, followed by other researchers, we find Yamane and Emiko investigating another area of the site with Hagiwara. Surveying the large crater in which they stand, Yamane supposes if he were to say that this were the massive footprint of a large creature, would Hagiwara believe him? Hagiwara seems less than skeptical at the prospect, and rather than discuss it any further, Yamane just continues his investigations.
A footprint.
Yeah.
Like, we're all standing in this thing, dude.
I think it took me a while because I'm like, the ground is sunken in.
Yeah.
But I'm like, it's terrain. It's an island. And
Yeah.
I was like, oh, shit.
No.
No,
He means right here?
Yeah.
But the two groups converge when Tanabe and his assistants enter the crater, and the professor waves his Geiger counter over a small stream of trickling groundwater. When the counter emits an ominous buzz, he shares a look of worry with Yamane, who articulates his findings. The footprint is radioactive. Tanabe calls out, urging all the gathered villagers to stay back, as this area is incredibly dangerous. As the crowd follows his instruction, Yamane takes a knee to peer into the water when something catches his eye. There, half lodged in the mud, appears to be a fossilized structure, an ancient-looking crustacean. Yamane quickly puts his glasses on before reaching into the water to pull it free from the mud, calling his daughter over to document his findings. He tells Emiko that what he's found is a trilobite, a 3-lobed marine arthropod thought long to be extinct. Tanabe, wearing his gloves once again, scolds Yamane for handling the specimen without proper protection.
Yes! I was so stressed out.
Yeah.
It's funny. He literally just pushes the crowd back, and Yamane's like, is that a baby bug?
Yeah.
Yoink!
But Yamane places his findings neatly into a box held by his daughter, and Ogata watches with great interest as Hagiwara glances over Emiko's shoulder and into the box, asking Yamane what he's found. Yamane answers succinctly, "It's an amazing discovery," before he returns to the rushing groundwater, reaching through it with his bare hands.
Yeah.
Sir!
Dude, come on.
Someone get him. Emiko, get your dad.
Yeah.
we can't be doing this.
Tanabe's like, fuck it. I tried.
Red, you heard the Gaga meter. That thing was going crazy.
Yes.
But suddenly, a villager on a hill repeatedly pounds a large metal bell with a heavy hammer, alerting the townsfolk down below. We watch as they rush hurriedly up the hill to safety, one of them shouting fearfully that Godzilla is on the other side of Hachiman Hill. I will say something very funny. We do see people on the research team also running up this hill. Ogata and Emiko are holding hands, and Emiko is smiling the whole way.
I did notice that.
Yeah.
They get to be together.
But in an overhead shot, we watch as the villagers abandon their homes on the coastline, converging together on long paths leading upward, many carrying sticks and rifles as they encounter the research team on higher ground. As the crowd gathers, Emiko breaks away from Ogata, peering over the surrounding villagers and calling out over their commotion to her father, who stands further upward on the path, flanked on either side by Hagiwara and Shinkichi. Yamane and Hagiwara ready their cameras as they're joined by Tanabe and his assistant, played by Tadashi Okabe. When Ogata and Emiko join the fray, Yamane announces with certainty to Tanabe that he saw it himself, a creature from the Jurassic Era. Loud, crashing footsteps echo on the other side of the hill as the group advances forward, a long trail of villagers forking down the winding path behind them. But suddenly, over the hill, a massive, scaly creature raises its head, peering down at them from its mountainous height. As Yamane brings his camera up to his eye to snap a photo, Hagiwara joins him as well, and the villagers cower and retreat in fear, pushing over each other to flee in fright down the hill.
Y'all saw the footprints.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What were we expecting?
We need a picture of it.
I mean, yeah, I guess.
Are you talking about their fear?
Yes.
It's like something had to make these.
They're like in disbelief. I see those footprints. I know that they belong to something gigantic.
Yeah.
But the creature wrenches open its massive mouth to shriek an ear-splitting roar through its rows of sharp and jagged teeth. As the villagers continue downward, they're joined by the research team, including Emiko, who takes a horror movie fall into the dirt.
Yeah.
The creature observes this as it gazes down at her, emitting another loud roar.
He's like, back in the day, they would have sacrificed you to me.
Yeah.
Oh, times have changed.
Ogata rescues Emiko from the ground, lifting her to her feet and cradling her in his arms behind some nearby shrubbery. But the creature's loud footsteps pound rhythmically as he departs in the other direction, and the group reconvenes, reaching higher ground with Mary Nada, who points down at the Odo Island beach, the sands of which are now scarred by the sharp, scaly footprints of the monster, who is now nowhere in sight, but whose plodding steps can still be heard throughout the island.
How fucking big is Godzilla that he's looking over a mountain?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You feel it, the ground shaking from the other side of the mountain.
Yes.
You can hear the damn stomps. It's like, dude, do we have a chance?
Yeah, no. And that makes me think, does make me think of Jurassic Park.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We just need a glass of water.
Yeah.
I will say this sequence is kind of the convergence of everything that we were talking about earlier with all the different crews and photography,
Yeah.
the composite work, the matte painting that is these footprints on this beach, by the way.
wow.
Just incredible work.
Yeah.
It was very funny to learn because, again, it's what you have at the time.
Right.
But our first sight of Godzilla in this film is absolutely 100% a hand puppet. And when you go back, it's absolutely a hand puppet.
Yeah.
But it's very charming.
Yeah.
And the way that they're able to composite this shot of them having shot that hand puppet and all of these villagers running down that hill.
Yeah.
I read it was 50 people that were brought in from Tokyo and a few hundred villagers that were there.
Damn.
Wow.
And so you're directing all of these extras and you're having to line up the shot and keep it perfect so that you can composite it later.
Yeah.
So it's just a lot of really incredible work here.
Yeah, because it does look really cool. And I'm going to be honest, I am loving learning about everything that went into this movie. I really, really enjoyed this movie. And like you were saying, seeing the effects and everything for it, it's like how it's 54.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How the fuck did you really pull that off and do it? I know they did King Kong before, but that was all stop motion?
Oh, yeah, I believe.
So, I mean, this is different.
I did read that Tsuburaya initially wanted to make Godzilla stop motion like King Kong.
Okay.
He had studied King Kong frame by frame when he was learning how to do all of this special effects work.
Mm-hmm.
But he had told them straight up, he said, if we're going to do stop motion Godzilla, it's going to take me 7 years.
Oh my God.
And they're like,
never
no.
mind.
Yeah.
They literally laughed. They said they laughed him out and they're like, you got to figure something else out, dude. I did want to double back because we were talking about the footsteps, the crashing sound.
Yeah.
I read 3 conflicting stories about how they created this sound.
Okay.
So the first story that I read, they said that they took a Japanese kettle drum and struck it with a knotted rope and then put this sound through what they called an echo box.
Okay.
And so that was the first way. The second way, the composer said that the footsteps were created with this very primitive amplifier that every time you hit it, it would emit this exact sound.
Okay.
Then the third way, which apparently has more backing as far as evidence is concerned, is they took an explosion, like the sound of an explosion, and you have the sound that is, with onomatopoeia, it's boom.
Yeah.
They took the out.
Okay.
Oh.
And so they clipped that off of the end, and then it's just that B of the explosion over and over again for the steps.
Okay.
I feel like that's very fitting as well.
Yeah.
Yes. So I think, honestly, if there's those 3, I think it's that one.
Yeah.
But we cut to a slideshow presentation flickering on a projector screen at the National Diet Building in Tokyo. With the lights low, Yamane addresses Parliament, sharing a depiction of a brontosaurus overlooking nature as it stands parked at a rocky shore in front of a stream. Yamane explains that approximately 2 million years ago, the brontosaurus and other dinosaurs were at their peak. We then see these other dinosaurs in further slides, masters of their domain, amongst mountains, trees, and volcanoes.
Was anybody else surprised and a little impressed that after what they just saw, he had time to put together a slideshow? He had the wherewithal to put this together.
Well, honestly, it kind of seems like he's had a lot of these slides lying around and just added.
Yeah.
Because one is pretty jarring compared to what the rest of it is. And I honestly feel like a DNA molecule should be telling us all this.
Yeah.
But Yamane switches to a diagram of the layers underneath the Earth's surface as he continues that scientists call this the Jurassic period, and it's believed that during the following geological period, the Cretaceous period, a rare intermediate organism was evolving from a marine reptile into a terrestrial animal. Yamane concludes his slideshow with the photo that he himself captured of the creature on Odo Island.
It's a jump scare.
Yeah.
It stands massive beyond the hill of Odo Island, I believe looking downland. But it does overlook the fleeing townsfolk below. The parliamentarians murmur in disbelief as Yamane surveys them, suggesting that they follow Odo Island tradition, and for the time being, he proposes that they call the creature Godzilla. Over the continued murmurs of the crowd, Yamane aims his pointer at the creature, explaining that they encountered Godzilla on Odo Island, and that this photo is of its head. It's like,
Yeah, we can tell.
God,
2 eyes were a dead giveaway.
Yeah.
he is probably sick with radiation poisoning from touching all that
Honestly,
Oh,
shit.
no shit.
Wash your
He's a
hands.
little
Yeah.
Should have popped some rat away or something.
But Yamane estimates that Godzilla stands at approximately 165 feet tall, and he addresses the obvious question: why such a creature would suddenly appear in their terrestrial waters? Returning to the presentation, which shows a slide of the many layers of rock beneath the ocean, Yamane posits that Godzilla was probably hidden away in a deep-sea cave, providing for his own survival, or possibly for other creatures like him.
What was the last thing you said?
Right, what?
Yeah, they're planning sequels already.
Yeah. And they learned all this shit from finding that little bug fossil?
Yeah, I gotta be honest, there's a lot that there is some pretty speculative shit going on.
Yeah.
But we'll take it. He says that after repeated underwater H-bomb tests, Godzilla's natural habitat was completely destroyed. Parliamentarians, Oyama at their center, shift nervously in their seats, vocalizing their dismay at Yamane's assessment. Yamane continues that these hydrogen bomb tests have driven Godzilla from his sanctuary, and Parliamentarian Ozawa, played by Kin Sugai, remarks how horrible this is, and her colleagues seated next to her agree. Yamane states that there is physical evidence to back up his theory, the first of which is the trilobite that he found himself underneath Godzilla's footprint. With a photograph of this find projected onto the screen, Yamane explains, as he did on Odo Island, that this creature is called a three-lobed arthropod, and he picks up a small specimen jar containing it, and an assistant passes it over to the parliamentarians to examine. Yamane continues that the trilobite is also believed to have gone extinct 2 million years ago, and that it belongs to the crustacean family. But the second piece of evidence, which he reveals in a small glass tube, is sand collected from the shell of the trilobite. Referencing the diagram of the Earth's layers, Yamane shares that there is no doubt that this sand is from one of the Jurassic Era strata. Using his pointer to circle the area just beneath the Pacific Ocean, Yamane adds that it's the exact same sand found in the red clay of those strata. He's then interrupted by a member of parliament, played by Katsumoto Kaichiro, who asks how Yamane can be so certain that the H-bombs are to blame for this, to which Yamane replies that the Geiger counter readings of the sand indicated the presence of strontium-90, And he says that Professor Tanabe will explain a little more about that momentarily.
It was the H-bomb.
Yeah.
I mean,
how else are we getting that far to open? Like, come on.
Yeah.
And I love that this is what we're harping on when he's introducing some really compelling and shocking ideas.
Yeah.
We're talking about, this creature, the potential that there are others like it,
Yeah.
that it's been sustaining itself. You said something about Eric Estrada. Like, it's been... And he's like, about those H-bombs, though.
Yeah.
It's like, come on.
But he adds that they discovered high levels of radiation of the kind produced only by H-bombs and the sand from Godzilla's body. No, I don't know when they collected sand from Godzilla's body.
Yeah, what the fuck?
I don't know. I'm just going to take his word for it.
He sprinkled a little bit when he stopped to take the picture.
He wanted to leave evidence. But the parliamentarians break out in nervous discussions until they're called to order by the chairman, and the blinds of the windows are opened, allowing light to pour into the room at the conclusion of Yamani's slideshow presentation. He removes his glasses, addressing the members of parliament and telling them that the physical evidence has allowed them to conclude that Godzilla is emitting high levels of H-bomb radiation. As the murmuring members once again overtake the room, they're called to order once again, but parliamentarian Oyama cuts through the clamor, rising to his feet and addressing the chairman. Oyama states that given the grave repercussions of Yamani's report, they shouldn't rush to make this public. Ozawa vehemently disagrees, shouting that that's exactly why it should be made public.
Yeah.
I understand the mass, people running and trying to, I get it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think after seeing that this thing is real, we know for a fact now Godzilla it's not in the old days type of thing where you're like, whatever, oh man.
Yeah.
We all seen this shit. There's a picture. He's smiling.
It's
like...
Happy as hell to be here.
He's like, I'm here all week.
He was, though.
We need to know.
Yeah.
We need to know.
That's what I'm saying. It's not like they ran some tests and this is the thing that could happen in the near future. We saw him on the island.
Yeah, it's really not as if they just discovered the footprints.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's different.
Yeah.
Which to me, even the footprints would be enough.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, this is too much. I'm sorry, I'm still laughing about the picture.
He was really happy,
He
dude.
was. But no, because the footprints, I guess, like crop circles. People
That's
are like,
honestly-
Sure.
they do that. So I could understand maybe that. Let's not jump to conclusions, whatever. But again, smiling picture.
Yeah.
It's
not-
here.
yeah.
It's here. It's happening.
But the members around Ozawa agree and applaud, but Oyama shouts for them to be quiet. He clarifies that what he means is that if this Godzilla thing is the result of an H-bomb... Ozawa interrupts him, interjecting that that's exactly what it is. But Oyama says that that's his point. If they make this public, their fragile diplomatic relations will be further strained. Ozawa, however, insists that the truth is the truth. So this discussion, fragile diplomatic relations, this is them saying without saying the United States.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because it was the United States that dropped the H-bomb.
Right.
And so this is them kind of getting around being so direct with it, but still very clearly addressing it.
Yeah.
And what's really this bothered me a lot. What I learned about the American version of Godzilla, I believe it's called Godzilla, the King of the Monsters.
Yes.
No.
And I believe they hired a Canadian actor and filmed a bunch of scenes with him in it so that it looked like he was part of the whole thing to make it more palatable for American audiences.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
It's fucking absurd.
Yeah, they even inserted him into shots.
Yeah. It's following this American reporter in Japan, and he's...
I'm sick.
No, I'm dead serious.
Oh my God.
But the thing that pissed me off is that scenes like this that are very important to the plot, that kind of explain everything that they've found and push everything forward for what they are about to do, this scene is completely cut from that film.
I knew you were going to say that. I'm not surprised.
Yeah, that's bullshit.
Yeah, and it's not the only one like that.
Yeah.
That's infuriating.
But Oyama rebuts that these fragile diplomatic relations is what makes this so serious. If they announce this too rashly, the public will panic. Japan's political life, its economy, and its foreign relations will be plunged into chaos. Having heard enough, Ozawa rises from her seat, pounding her hand on the table in front of her, admonishing Oyama as a fool and asking him what he's even saying. Oyama is obviously offended by this. And other members of parliament call for Ozawa to apologize, but she stays strong in her convictions, demanding for the truth to be made public. Photographers gather in front of the parliamentarians, snapping photographs as the meeting devolves into a frenzy. We get one last shot of Yamane and Tanabe seated in front of Ogata, Emiko, Shinkichi, Hagiwara, and Tanabe's assistant, all silent and stoic in their resolve. So the way that this scene ends, I felt like the result of it was going to be we got nowhere.
Yeah.
We came here and they just argued, and that was the end of it.
Yeah.
But we immediately cut to the front page of a newspaper, the headline reading, Disaster Response Center established.
I was like, oh, they figured it out.
Yeah. But we turn to another page, which features a far more alarming headline. Heavy losses at sea. 17 ships sunk to date.
Let's stay out of the sea for now.
Yeah.
Especially that area?
Yeah. But I'm like, this is why you have to tell people.
Exactly.
This is why you can't hide shit like this.
It's fucking Godzilla. We shouldn't be hiding it. Anything
No.
about
Not at all.
It's too big to like try to conceal.
Yeah, Mountain couldn't even hide him.
No.
But you want us? He wants to be like he's not there.
Like,
No.
And we're supposed to.
Yeah.
It's like, I believe that's his head.
Yeah.
I was told by Congress or whatever. But we then cut to a group of uncredited commuters gathered together on a train. A young woman laments that it's awful. Atomic tuna, radioactive fallout, and now this Godzilla to top it all off. She wonders what they would do if he showed up in the Tokyo Bay. A man in a bow tie next to her jokes that Godzilla would probably go straight for her first, and she scolds him, calling him horrible, before sharing that she barely escaped the atomic bomb in Nagasaki, and now this.
Again, sobering.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's these moments of like, fuck.
It's just, it gives you that feeling and you're like, 1954.
Yeah.
And you really think about it.
Mm-hmm.
But a young man next to her realizes that he'll need to find a place to evacuate, and the young woman asks if he'll find a place for her, too. The man in the bow tie complains about the need to evacuate again, admitting that he's had enough, and the young man can only sigh. And again, it's exactly that.
Yeah.
But at the Disaster Response Center, a group of soldiers march up the steps and inside the building. They walk past long queues of citizens, small sections of folks demarcated by large white signs. Hagiwara stands interviewing members of one group in the long hall who tell him that they're in deep-sea fishing and that they can't do their work without ships. He notes their continued concerns, needing a second page on his pad to do so properly. But deeper inside, a group of journalists gather around an uncredited official who reads off a list of coordinates, explaining that from this location is where the frigate squadron will attack Godzilla with depth charges, warning that all vessels in the vicinity should exercise caution. After the journalists disperse, we're taken to the open ocean, where triumphant brass instruments sing in the score, and we pan across 10 ships, all well-manned and armed, loading their depth charges to blast into the sea. Once ready, they're promptly aimed and fired into the water. We ride passenger on one of the ships, watching as the charges detonate, sending water forcefully upward in an explosive splash, one after the other, after the other, after the other, and the ships sail off, their mission seemingly complete. Again, I think there are things that we talk about where we say, you know, this film aged well or this film didn't age well.
Yeah.
I think one aspect that doesn't age well is the government listening to experts and actually following through
Shit.
on some shit. But, you know, let's keep going. We cut to a television, a news station broadcasting the operation, where the voice of a news reporter explains that with nearly 20 ships sunk so far, Godzilla, the monster of the sea, has all of Japan in panic. As we watch the bombs bursting beneath the surface of the ocean, the reporter notes that the frigate squadron has begun its depth charge attack, with the 10-vessel fleet having left the port at 10 a.m. this morning to head for the west coast of Odo Island, and 17 minutes later, they were given permission to commence the attack. But we pull back from the television to find Yamane, Emiko, Ogata, and Shing-Chi sat around a living room table in the Yamane home. But upon hearing the news of this bombing, Yamane, seemingly frustrated, rises to his feet and exits the room in a huff, followed shortly by Emiko, who rushes to check on her father. Shing-Chi asks Ogata if something is wrong, and Ogata explains that Yamane is a zoologist and that he doesn't want to see Godzilla killed. Shing-Chi looks away, probably thinking, that fucking lizard killed my family.
Yeah.
Let's get his ass.
Yeah.
They're like, is anybody thinking about the lizard though?
Yeah.
Honestly,
How does
dude,
he put in his feelings?
he seemed nice when we met him.
He smiled for the
It's like, I don't think he crushed your
He
family.
gave us some sand. It just doesn't sound like something he would do.
Yeah, he gave us a Ziploc of sand somehow.
Right. Let us take a sample.
Yeah, it was very kind.
Are you sure it was Godzilla that did that to
I
you?
don't. That was someone else's big ass foot.
Right. You heard him. There's other crevices down there.
Yeah.
Dude, his brother, I think.
You got my guy all wrong.
But in the other room, Emiko calls out to her father, only to find him seated in a chair near a window in the dark of his den. She switches on the light, but he continues to face away from her. Somberly, he asks his daughter to leave him alone for a while. Emiko lowers her head solemnly, slowly pulling the door closed, but her father calls out to her again, but only asks if she'll shut off the light before she leaves.
Oh, he wants to feel sad.
Yeah.
So I can put on that Smith's record.
And I get it, Doc. I don't want to hurt Zilla either, but he's fucking shit up.
Yeah, we
He
gotta
doesn't
do
care. Yeah, he doesn't care.
I don't care how big he was smiling earlier.
Yeah. He was smiling because he was killing us.
Yeah, he loves it. It's his favorite thing. But Emiko does as told and closes the door as she exits into the hall, leaving Yamane to sit in silence in the dark, gazing out of the window. But that night, after being treated to scenes of the Tokyo city lights, we're taken to a cruise ship out in the ocean, where a couple sits together at a table near the railing and beneath the light of paper lamps.
What are we doing?
Yeah.
We gotta live our life, man.
Not on the water.
Yeah, I was going to say not out on the sea.
All right, good point. But the deck of the ship has become a dance floor filled with jovial partners slow dancing together to upbeat music. But cutting their way through the crowd are the young woman and the man in the bow tie that we met earlier on the train.
Oh.
Yeah, okay.
They smile together, the bow tie man kissing her neck as they reach the railing on the other side of the deck. But their laughter ceases when the sound of explosive steps suddenly ring out from beneath the depths of the sea, and out in the water, Godzilla, played by Katsumi Tetsuki, Haruo Nakajima, and Jiro Suzuki, slowly rises out of the water, lifting his head, his jagged frame carved out of the darkness of the evening. I will say there are 3 people credited with playing Godzilla, and it is at different times that they're playing him. It's not 3 people crowded in a suit. But from what I read anyway, Nakajima seems to be the guy that played Godzilla the most, if not entirely, because he did kind of make it as though the other guy, Tezuka, didn't really play him that much at all.
Oh.
So I'm not really sure. It's a lot of hearsay, and I didn't hear from everyone.
Right.
Okay.
But we will talk a little bit more about this suit when we see more of it.
Yes.
But the young woman clings to the bow tie man as she shrieks, "It's Godzilla!"
So y'all knew about him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yet and still we're on the water.
Mm-hmm. Where he lives.
Yeah.
It's giving Jaws.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The crowd cowers, tripping over each other to rush for the doors to the cabin of the ship. The crew pleading with the guests not to panic. It's like, fat chance.
No,
dude.
Yeah.
dude.
Come on.
That's gone. That ship has sailed.
But his heavy steps echoing across the ocean floor and his long tail splashing waves across the sea, Godzilla disappears back into the deep water. The following day, Yamane makes his way past the long queues at the Disaster Response Center, where people loudly complain about the long wait in their current conditions. But Yamane is saluted by soldiers as he heads into a conference room, walking past a large table lined with uncredited military personnel, to meet the chief of the emergency headquarters, played by Takeo Oikawa. They sit down together at a small table in the corner of the room, the chief admitting that he's at a loss, and that if this continues, they'll have to close their international shipping lanes. He asks Yamane if he has any ideas, as even the slightest hint would help, and the uncredited official from earlier, flanked by Professor Tanabe, offers a more straightforward request to Yamane. They want to know if there's a way to kill Godzilla. Yamane reveals that this is impossible, and he states that Godzilla was baptized in the fire of the H-bomb and survived. He asks, what could kill him now?
It's a really valid question, because if you've already survived that, it kind of seems like you would survive anything.
Yeah.
But also, if that's how you feel, why were you in there listening to the Smiths in the dark?
Yeah.
Like when you be like, oh, they can't kill it. Like, it's fine. Like, you were scared.
Yeah.
You know it can be killed.
Yeah, that's true. He should have been staying out there. He's like, past the whatever.
Yeah, he was really sad.
Yeah. But Yamane suggests that their priority should be to study Godzilla's incredible power of survival, and the scene abruptly ends there. I did find it interesting that he did not do anything with that cruise ship.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
He just popped up to get some fresh air and then went back down.
He's like, now tell your friends.
I'm still here.
He's like, y'all are on a fucking cruise ship?
I think nobody had a camera, so he's like, oh, fuck that.
He loves it.
But we cut to the bullpen of a newsroom where Hagiwara sits with other journalists, and he and his colleagues are handed newspapers fresh off the presses. One colleague shares his opinion that Yamane has some really good points and that they should be studying Godzilla instead of quaking in fear, while another colleague, played by Haruyo Nakajima, isn't so sure about this assessment, and Hagiwara finds himself somewhere in the middle, admitting that it's a difficult question to answer. But Hagiwara's editor, played by Katsumi Tezuka, enters the room with the contact written on a small piece of paper, passing it off to Hagiwara and giving him the assignment to interview this man on the double. So I will say these two men, the guy that's sitting on the left with the pencil on his ear,
Right.
and the editor that just walked in, are the two men who are credited, for the most part, with playing Godzilla.
Oh, that's cool.
But Hagiwara snags the paper, confirming the name written on it, Dr. Serizawa, and the editor confirms this, adding that he's Professor Yamane's future son-in-law. Hagiwara asks if he's the girl's fiancé, and the editor confirms this as well.
Did you guys put this together before right now?
I don't know.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Am I dumb? Because I didn't realize that at all.
No.
No, because there's not really a scene. There's no moment of affection.
Okay.
Yeah.
She waves goodbye, but he doesn't seem to give a shit.
Yeah.
He's like, get the fuck out of here.
And then you have Ogata, who seems clearly like he's her boyfriend.
That's what I
Yeah.
thought. And then the way that we meet them, I was like, wait, what?
I think the only thing that is there is what he said when they were on the boat alone together.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. It doesn't play that way from the beginning. Like you were saying, they look like a couple, Ogata and
Yeah.
Emiko.
Yeah.
So
Because Ogata sounded jealous, but he was just like, maybe it's a final farewell.
yeah.
And then that's all.
Yeah, because I didn't even like take it that way.
I only took it that way because I read more about the plot before I wrote it down.
Thank you for your honesty.
No problem. And I was like, oh, so he's mad. He's jealous.
Yeah, it's on some Lemon Square shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But to find out they're engaged?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wild.
Yeah.
You can't even wave bye?
No. But we cut to Emiko, who stands next to Ogata, sitting behind his desk in the office and facing away from her towards the window. The sunlight cast against them through the blinds. Emiko tells Ogata that she's sure her father would understand. And Ogata agrees that they have nothing to be ashamed of, but says that when he thinks about Serizawa, he loses his nerve. And I'm sorry, yeah, you have a lot to be ashamed of.
Yeah.
It's like, hold on a second.
Yeah, infidelity is a shameful thing. I don't care.
Yeah.
But he turns to face Emiko, noting that if it wasn't for the war, Serizawa wouldn't have lost his eye. Emiko kneels by Ogata's side, revealing that she's thought of Serizawa as an older brother ever since she was a child, and she still feels the same way today.
What?
Yeah, I mean, I guess tell me how you feel about this dude, but I don't why are you engaged to him?
That's a great question.
I was like, brother, like, this is all so confusing.
Yeah.
It's about to get more confusing because this reaction is wild to me. She says that she thinks of Serizawa as an older brother, always has, still does to this day. Ogata smiles, holding Emiko gently by her shoulders and thanking her. It's like, were you worried? Like, what the hell?
He's like, oh, thank God.
Yeah, I thought you loved him or something. Like, woohoo. But it's just so strange.
It is. This, too, I will admit, it is weird. I don't know why it's there. I mean, I get it. We're trying to get some kind of story to give them something to do, I guess.
Yeah.
But,
It's odd.
yeah.
One thing I did read is that originally in the previous iteration of the story before the screenplay was rewritten, it was very clear that Ogata and Emiko were just a couple, and Serizawa was just a friend who worked for her father.
So they're just trying to add some drama.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But just then, Shang-Chi arrives, letting himself inside the office and removing his hat as he steps in. He tells Emiko that Hagiwara is here to see her, and he does not seem confused at all to see Emiko kneeling behind Ogata's desk right next to him.
This is just what happened.
Yeah.
I think everyone knows.
It's like everyone
Yeah.
knows you're cheating.
Yeah.
Shang-Chi wipes the sweat from his neck with his hat, and it's not established, but I couldn't tell if maybe Ogata had gotten him a job here.
Okay.
Oh, that would make sense.
Yeah.
Because we see him a bit later, and it kind of seems that way.
Yeah.
But it's never...
I thought, honestly, that he just worked there. I don't know why, but I was just like, oh, you just work here.
Yeah. But Hagiwara breezes past Shang-Chi in the doorway, removing his hat as well and pardoning his intrusion. He thanks the young man, who exits, and is approached by Emiko and Ogata at the center of the room. Hagiwara asks a favor of Emiko. He says that he attempted to interview Serizawa, but he refused him, so he requests for Emiko to make the proper introductions. He says he can explain it all later, but it's very urgent. Emiko turns to face Ogata, who meets her gaze, offering that this is actually perfect timing, and he suggests that he should go along with her to explain things personally.
With Emiko and the reporter?
Yeah. Emiko counters that she should be the one to tell Serizawa, as it would be easier on him to hear it from her. Hagiwara is like, are you cheating on him? Like, he's right there.
It's like, what did I just walk into? Please don't do it while I'm there.
Yeah.
I have work to do. But Ogata concurs, and Hagiwara rushes outside, urging Emiko to follow him to the car waiting outside, and stating that they should leave right away. After he leaves, Ogata gathers Emiko's umbrella for her, and hands it over as they make their way toward the door. She assures him that she'll break things to Serizawa gently, and before she exits the office, Ogata lets her know that he plans to discuss Shang-Chi's schooling with her father. They smile and bid each other farewell. I don't know if someone has adopted this kid,
Yeah.
and I don't
have no
know
idea.
Yeah.
if it's Ogata or Yamane. I'd like to know more.
I wish I could help
Yeah.
But as Hagiwara and Emiko approach Serizawa's laboratory in a taxi, Ogata drives his motorcycle with Shang-Chi on the back to Yamane's house, parking outside before walking the motorbike in through the entrance to the property. But inside Serizawa's laboratory, he sits at a table in his lab coat across from an eager Hagiwara. Emiko, on the other hand, has found a seat in the corner of the room, away from the interview, but paying close attention to it. The interview already in progress, Serizawa immediately counters Hagiwara, insisting that there must be some kind of mistake, as what Hagiwara has stated is not at all what his research is about. But Hagiwara reveals that their correspondent in Switzerland heard from a German scientist that when the plan Serizawa is working on is finished, it'll be a major breakthrough in defeating Godzilla. Serizawa, however, objects, pointing out that he doesn't know any German scientists. Hagiwara responds with, "I see."
I was like, damn, he really gave him nothing.
Yeah, he's no help.
But he asks instead what Serizawa is working on now. As he leans forward, Serizawa leans back casually in his chair, answering that his work isn't worth discussing. Hagiwara looks over at Emiko, who sternly shakes her head left to right, which prompts Hagiwara to end the interview, thanking Serizawa and apologizing for disturbing him. Serizawa apologizes himself for not being able to have been more help, and as Hagiwara rises to his feet, Emiko and Serizawa do as well, Hagiwara bidding them goodbye after Emiko insists that she plans to stay a little while longer. And after the reporter exits the laboratory, Emiko follows him out to show him to the door.
She's like, no, remember, I got to tell him about the affair. Remember? I can't leave.
It's like, you know what I'm doing. But after they leave, Serizawa paces for a moment before taking a seat in the chair that Emiko once occupied, staring pensively before switching on a nearby radio. But outside the laboratory, Hagiwara admits to Emiko that he had hopes to at least find out what Serizawa was working on. And as an uplifting harpsichord emanates from the radio in the lab, Emiko notes that while Serizawa can be moody, Hagiwara has at least broken the ice, and she urges him to keep trying. He assures her that he will, and he exits the laboratory proper. Emiko then returns to Serizawa, who rises from his seat to peer out into the garden through a large window in the wall. She asks him just what is it that he is working on, as Yamane himself has been wondering too. Serizawa breezes past her to shut off the radio, but he then turns to face her, asking if he should rather show her than tell her. Emiko agrees, somewhat reluctantly, but Serizawa insists that she must not tell a soul what she sees.
That's concerning.
Yeah.
Yes. When Emiko says that she won't, Serizawa reveals that he's risking his life on this project, and he asks her to swear it. Emiko nods her head, and Serizawa leads her down a nearby set of stairs and through a locked door into his basement laboratory. He switches on the lights, stepping inside, but Emiko stands there, marveling at an array of intricately arranged glassware and a massive piece of machinery at the other end of the room. As a mechanical noise chugs rhythmically, Emiko sets her eyes on a large fish tank at the center of the lab, and Serizawa collects a small dish from a nearby locker. After putting on a pair of protective gloves, he takes a pair of tweezers, collecting a small sample of his project and dropping it into the water. He then steps back from the tank, flipping a switch, which causes long light bulbs overhead to turn on, beaming their brightness over the tank. Emiko steps forward to take a closer look, but Serizawa urges her to stay back as he holds her by the shoulders. The pair watch as the water in the tank suddenly becomes cloudy, and as the score begins to shriek all around them, Emiko shields her eyes, screaming. She buries her face into Serizawa's shoulder, but promptly exits the lab, collecting herself against a wall and holding her hand to her stomach.
Maybe warn me before you show me some shit like this.
Honestly, and what's wild is we have no idea yet.
Yeah,
not at all.
It's pretty cool to have that mystery, but it's also like, God damn it, what is it?
What is it? But it's like sad in a way because he is trusting her with this when he doesn't trust anybody else.
Yeah.
That is true.
And like she came here to be like, actually, it's not working out. You know what I mean? Like, I know that the love triangle is like a little clunky, or it's clunky, period.
Mm-hmm.
But it is distracting in moments like this because I'm like, are you still going to tell this dude? Or like, nah.
Well, how can we tell him now? He's capable of...
Yeah, then I'm going to end up in that
No
ditch.
Yeah, I don't want any part of that shit.
Be for real sleeping with the fishes.
Yeah, dude. It's like, great experiment, dude. I'm going to get the hell out of here.
And I will love you forever. I'm going to go home now.
Right, bye, fiance.
Yeah, forever, fiance.
But she wipes tears from her eyes as Serizawa closes and locks the door to his laboratory. And without a word, Emiko marches up the staircase. But Serizawa stops her, and when she turns to face him, he shares that she's the only person he'd show this experiment to, telling her not to forget it.
See?
True.
Yeah.
Overwhelmed, Emiko assures him that she won't forget it and that she won't tell a single soul.
She's like, yeah, no, I'm traumatized. I'm not going to forget that.
Emiko returns home somberly, where she's greeted by Ogata and Shinkichi, who immediately take notice of her demeanor when she slowly sinks to the floor to remove her shoes. So you're just fucking here all the time.
Yeah.
and Serizawa doesn't realize what's happening?
Yeah. That was the same thought I had. I was like, oh, you're already here.
Yeah. But when she rises to her feet again, Ogata holds her shoulder, asking if something happened at the lab. Emiko lies that nothing happened at all, before heading into an adjacent room and closing the door behind her. Ogata and Shinkichi slink into the living room, taking a seat across from each other at a small table, and watching through the open dividers across the house as Emiko ties an apron around her waist in the other room. I don't understand the geography of this house.
Yeah, I was confused too because I thought she was going to go in there and start playing the Smiths, but then she's just right here putting an apron on.
Yeah.
Yamane enters, asking if Emiko has returned home, and she calls out to her father jovially, bringing 2 glass bottles on a tray for them to enjoy at the dining table. But suddenly, a siren sounds outside, and loud, crashing steps are heard nearby. Yamane realizes immediately that Godzilla has returned, and he rushes outside, followed closely by Shinkichi. But before Ogata can join them, Emiko stops him, revealing that she was unable to tell Serizawa about them.
Emiko, please.
There's a fucking giant lizard outside.
Yeah.
We can talk later. Maybe. Ogata just shakes her shoulders a little bit and then rushes off to join Yamane and Shinkichi. I don't know what that
like, what reaction is that?
It was snap out of it.
It was playful. He's like, and then he just leaves. But as he rushes off, the pounding steps of Godzilla continue to echo throughout the city. We eventually find Godzilla, peeking his head out of the ocean, rising slowly and certainly, only to be fired upon by the heavy artillery of the military, who wait from a nearby bridge overlooking the water. But the monster just eats the attack to no consequence, lurching his way forward. On the bridge, pedestrians are guided to safety by the military, carrying their most prized possessions with them, as more reinforcements arrive on the bridge, trucks filled with military and medical personnel. Yamane pushes his way to the front of the crowd with Ogata and Shinkichi, introducing himself to the military officer guarding this section of the bridge. His voice quavering, he asks to pass through, but the officer won't allow it, firmly stating that he can't guarantee their safety. Accepting this, Yamane instead implores the man to tell his commanding officer not to shine searchlights onto Godzilla, as they'll only make him angrier. The soldier states that he can't leave his post. I don't know, I was like, do they have radios?
Yeah.
He's like, I don't know what to tell you, dude.
It's like, and I don't even know where he is, so... But Ogata suggests instead that they head to the top of a nearby hill, and from that hill, they watch as Godzilla makes his way onto the land, towering over the city, and with large labored steps, he levels small structures within his path, toppling over electrical lines, showering debris over the fleeing and frantic public. We suddenly see a train filled with passengers, the engineers inside staring in horror through the front window as they spy the massive beast before them, his plodding steps crashing through the railway station and onto the tracks in front of them. Godzilla brings his foot down, derailing the train before arching his back in a roar, the spines rippling as he reaches down, seizing one of the detached cars in his sharp teeth before flinging it away. He didn't like the taste of it.
Yeah. He's mad.
Yes.
The surviving passengers pour out of the toppled train, seizing their belongings and running to safety, as others cower within the train car, unable to move, only to be promptly stomped by the large claw of the massive lizard. The music in the score pulses ominously as the surviving passengers flee, and Godzilla continues his rampage through the city. Yamane, Ogata, Shink-Chi, and all those gathered on the hill watch in dismay as Godzilla approaches the bridge, seizing the steel in his claws and tearing it to pieces. He roars into the night, but seemingly satisfied with this destruction, marches his way back into the sea. We fade to black.
He looked a little annoyed when he was going back into the sea.
It's like, do I have to?
Yeah. I wanted to talk about this costume a little bit now that we've seen it in all its glory.
Oh, yeah.
Like you were saying earlier, Tsuburaya said that the costume was a complete last resort because what he had wanted was the stop motion.
Mm-hmm.
But like you said, we didn't have the time or the budget for that.
Yeah.
So there was a sculptor, Taiso Toshimitsu, and an art director, Akira Watanabe, and they had both known and worked with Tsuburaya for years. I read, it was in that same book, the Japan's Favorite Monstar.
Mm-hmm.
They said that the initial designs were scrapped because it looked too humanoid. And so they started to study dinosaur books. So they designed him to be 165 feet tall. So they made the costume 1/25th of that. So the costume was about 6.5 feet tall.
Oh.
Okay.
They built the frame from wire and bamboo sticks. Then they added a metal mesh, some cushioning, and then coats of latex. But they were melting raw chunks of latex, stirring it by hand, and globbing it onto the frame. Then they carved the scales into it. So because they did it in this way with the latex and the wire frame, it weighed over 220 pounds.
Good Lord.
And because of their application, it was super, super stiff. So you talked earlier about Nakajima.
Yeah.
He had said, and I thought it was interesting too, because he was a stuntman, an actor, and an athlete. And Tezuka was a teenager, it said in the book. But they were both super athletic and martial artists, and they were chosen for their athleticism.
Oh, wow. Oh, I think I mixed up their credits in that bullpen then.
Oh, well.
One is clearly a teenager and one is a grown-ass man.
Yeah.
So Nakajima said that he went in for his first fitting and they opened up the spines in the back for him to climb in. He said that it felt like a straitjacket, that he couldn't breathe. He couldn't move his fingers. He could barely turn his head a few inches. There was no slack in the joints. It was unbearably heavy, and dragging around that tail, he said it was torture.
Oh, man.
That the tail was so heavy. He said that after a few steps, he fell.
Oh,
like
wow.
he couldn't even hold himself up. He said that he was dazed on the ground because he had fallen, completely drenched in sweat. And while he's lying there, the crew members all run over to him, and he hears one of them say, "Yeah, it looks like it's going to work."
He's on the ground.
Yeah.
I bet he was like, no. So what they ended up doing was cutting the suit in half, and they made kind of like rope suspenders. So when you're only seeing Godzilla's feet, he's only wearing the bottom part with the rope suspenders. And when you're only seeing the top of him, he's only wearing the top. Then eventually they made another full body costume with lighter latex, but he said it was still pretty torturous to walk in.
I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
I read as well, I think Nakajima also had parts in a few Kurosawa films.
Oh.
Okay.
And so they were talking about how seriously he took this role of Godzilla, to where it wasn't just, oh, I'm a man playing a monster in a suit.
Yeah.
He went and he studied animal movements at the zoo. He was like trying to really get into the mind of this character.
Okay.
I mean, I feel like it's a pretty iconic performance.
Yeah.
The way that he moves. And did you guys, honestly, it's probably a creepypasta, but did y'all ever hear the story about the actor in the Godzilla suit that wouldn't take it off? And he was like, he like died in there or something?
Wait, what?
Oh, no.
I'm going to need more details on
Yeah,
that.
no.
Like
I
he
can't remember.
became like he was.
I think he like fused with it or something. I can't remember. Somebody needs to help me. But I think it was a creepypasta.
I think that's that film Clown.
No.
Yeah.
I knew you were going to say that. It's not.
Now, it has been some time, but I do know on the old episodes of Creep and No Sleep, we covered one where they did go to an abandoned amusement park. And there was a Mickey Mouse person that was down.
Oh, yeah. Abandoned by Disney.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. I remember.
That's true.
But that wasn't it. I promise it was Godzilla.
No, I believe you.
Please, somebody find it.
Yeah, please.
But when we return, we're treated to newspaper articles, one reading, research teams arrive from around the world, before witnessing airplanes landing on the runway of a Japanese airport from Japan Airlines and Pan American, as well as the military transport services. At the Disaster Response Center, a group of uncredited Americans joined the large table filled with military personnel to attend a meeting called in response to Godzilla's recent attack. The chief suggests erecting a barbed wire barrier along the Japanese coast, 100 feet high and 165 feet deep, running 50,000 volts through it to electrocute Godzilla. You're talking about the height, aren't you?
No.
Okay.
I was just wondering if that is more effective than an H-bomb. Because I'm still stuck on that.
He was born from this, and you're like, let's shock him a little.
Yeah. I'm just not on board.
Renée's like, yeah, that's a great idea.
He's just
That'll get him.
Yeah. But his audience captive, the chief drags a pointer across the coast on the map, noting that they'll have to evacuate the inhabitants of these areas, not only outside of the perimeter, but also everyone living within the 1,600 feet of the inside of the barrier. After he's handed a report by an uncredited officer, he adds that the Defense Forces and the Coast Guard will of course continue their respective duties outlined in their security plan without delay. We watch as these areas are evacuated by the military, large crowds of men, women, and children herded with all of their belongings onto large trucks parked throughout their towns and villages, an announcement echoing overhead stating that at 16:30 hours, Godzilla was sighted at sea, 15 miles northeast of Kananzaki and heading northwest. As families are rushed into small lodging centers, the announcement continues that a maximum security alert has been issued for coastal areas between Tokyo and Yokohama. The Godzilla theme music plays as we watch military and construction vehicles, tanks and ambulances fill the emptied streets, crossing bridges and speeding down vacant roads, as in a montage, a sprawling fence of electric towers are constructed, lining the entirety of the coastline, just as the chief ordered. These towers are more matte work.
Oh, wow.
It's great.
Yeah, I couldn't tell.
No. Another thing that they had mentioned as well was the difficulty for the audiences in Japan to see this evacuation.
Okay.
Because of how they had just experienced things similar during the war when they were receiving announcements like this. So it's just heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But inside of a power station, the wall lined with machinery and switches controlling the electrical fences, workers stand at their posts, checking each of the sectors and throwing the switches to feed power to the fences. A nearby radio broadcasts a special news report, and the camera presses in, a reporter announcing that all the residents of Minato, Shinagawa, and Ota wards have been ordered to evacuate. When the order is repeated, we cut to the Yamane household, where Emiko takes a seat at the small table in the living room, as Ogata stands on the patio, peering out at searchlights arcing over the city in the night sky. When the broadcast ends, Ogata approaches Emiko, sharing with her that he plans to ask for her father's consent today. In a very odd edit, Emiko rises twice from the table.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know either. But she rushes to the front of the home, helping her father with his briefcase as he returns and removes his shoes. He inches his way into the living room, his eyes unfocused and his mind off somewhere else. Emiko removes his jacket, asking him what's wrong, but he just silently takes his seat at the dining table. After a moment, he grumbles that all the government can think of is killing Godzilla. He laments that they don't try to study his resistance to radiation instead, calling it a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I understand what he's saying.
Yeah.
But I also feel like we can take Godzilla apart after we kill him and figure out what's going on.
Yeah. Like, for real, he's a menace.
Yeah, dude.
Like, we've got to stop this.
Did you see what he just
menace.
did?
Yeah. Yeah.
He derailed a train going for a walk.
Yeah.
I don't know what you...
We got to get this guy off the streets.
Thinking about it, and I know I said it, but we are taking pictures of him. He is being a menace.
Yes.
Is this Spider-Man?
Radioactive?
Yeah. Yeah, radioactive hero.
But Ogata, however, takes a seat across from Yamane, voicing his disagreement. But Yamane counters that he's not suggesting this on some kind of a whim, noting that no scientist in the world has ever seen anything like Godzilla, remarking that it's a priceless specimen found only in Japan. But Ogata counters that that's no reason to let such a violent monster run loose. He adds that Godzilla is no different from the H-bomb still hanging over Japan's head. Yamane asks sarcastically if that means they shouldn't unlock the secret of how he survived the exposure to such high radiation. Ogata doesn't have an answer for this, but upon determining that Ogata is just like the others who wish to see Godzilla killed, Yamane kicks him out of his house before storming out of the room himself.
You get back here and give me consent to marry your daughter.
Yeah.
It's like, dude,
It's like, fuck!
Yeah.
I really fucked that up.
Picked the wrong time.
Yeah.
It couldn't have gone worse.
Emiko apologizes for her father's behavior, but Ogata takes the blame for his own lack of tact in the discussion. Emiko insists that something has come over her father, and as she wipes tears from her eyes, Ogata promises that he'll find the right moment to talk to him about their relationship.
Yamane is going through it.
Yeah.
I don't think he gives a fuck about that right now at all.
And I'm sorry, can we talk about Serozawa first?
Yeah, no shit.
It's like, I'll get permission from your dad, and then he'll have to like be okay with
He'll
it.
be cool with
What
it,
are you
it's fine.
talking about?
I'm sure he knows.
Well,
He's like, dude, you're here every fucking day.
Yeah.
I'm not an idiot. I'm
Yeah.
a scientist.
But the pair are interrupted by the peaceful chime of a special news bulletin. As the camera presses in on the radio in the living room, a reporter announces that Godzilla continues to advance towards the Tokyo-Yokohama coast, the barrier of which is charged with high-voltage electricity.
Just the fact that he's like, I am going to talk to him. And then this news report gets in and it's like, oh, no, he's coming. He's on his way.
Yeah, there are bigger fish to fry, dude.
Yeah, no shit.
It's just like this reminder of like, hey, put your mind on your business. Focus.
We, for some reason, see two birds leaping around their cage in the living room, squeaking a song, as the announcer concludes with a warning to exercise extreme caution. Birds do not have a good track record
No.
on Podmortem, a horror podcast.
Unfortunately.
So I was immediately concerned.
Yeah.
But at the barricade, uncredited Coast Guard officers spot Godzilla off in the distance at about 2,800 feet, casting a searchlight into the ocean. As their beams arc over the open water, a series of tanks ride through the empty city streets, seeking the proper vantage point to fire upon Godzilla when he returns. And just then, accompanied by ominous music in the score, Godzilla rises from the depths of the ocean, watched by military personnel who rush to man their heavy artillery.
Did that sequence kind of feel like a silent film?
Yeah, actually.
Okay.
As the monster trudges forward, splashing his way through the water, the military aim their cannons upward, watching and waiting for the creature to approach the electric fencing. When he enters the vicinity, the sector alarm buzzes in the control room, and a power station worker, played by Ishirō Honda in a cameo,
That's funny.
throws the switch. We watch as Godzilla marches through the electrical wires, the surface of his scaly skin shocked as he makes contact. As he pushes through them, the electrical towers begin to spark and smoke, and the military takes this as their cue to open fire. Godzilla roars ferociously as he's hit from all directions by the military's heavy artillery, but he continues his destruction unabated, crashing through the surrounding towers with ease and sending them crumbling in a heap to the ground below.
Yeah, he really said, fuck all this shit.
Yeah.
Why did we think this would work?
It's that. And I'm like, the H-bomb didn't get him. The electrified fence didn't get him.
Nope.
Let's shoot. It's like, dude, it's not going to do anything.
This is all we got.
Yeah.
As missiles make contact and bombs explode all around him, Godzilla sweeps his tail, toppling over another tower before turning his attention to the remaining line of fencing. His mouth opens wide, and a steady stream of smoke emanates from deep within his throat. His atomic breath reaches the remaining electrical structures, causing them to glow brightly before they slowly melt and crumble into pieces. We lost.
Yeah, no, he's leveling up before our eyes. Like, he couldn't do that earlier.
No.
He was just smiling.
I wonder, I was like, is that the glow that they saw in the ocean?
Oh.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
That makes sense. Because
'Cause
I was
his-
like, what the fuck?
Okay, yeah.
His spines light up like he's powering up as he does it.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it was just like, I don't know.
That's horrific. I did read in that book that they used a hand puppet with the nozzle that sprayed mist for the atomic breath.
Wow.
Okay.
And that these towers were made of white wax that they melted by aiming lights at them.
Oh.
It looks so fucking cool.
It
Yeah.
does. I read that Honda said the breath was an attempt to make the ambiguous unambiguous because he was talking about the idea of radiation. And he's like, it's something that you can't see, but is clearly destructive.
Yeah.
And this was his way of showing that destruction through the atomic breath.
Okay, okay.
And he is.
Yes. Godzilla, surrounded in smoke, bellows a triumphant roar as he continues onward through the city. Citizens run for their lives as he stands massive before them, unleashing his atomic breath onto the buildings below, the music and the score menacing as the structures burst into flames and he marches on. The flames rising to his fearsome height, Godzilla continues his rampage, the spines on his back beginning to glow as he releases his breath on the citizens below. Emergency vehicles race through the streets, desperate to put out the flames, but Godzilla's path of destruction leads him to a power plant, which he promptly explodes with his exterminating exhale. As he rages forward, the emergency vehicles somehow lose control, both of them crashing before they can reach their destinations. As citizens cower in an alley, Godzilla crushes the buildings around them as he lurches his way toward the city. And once there, he comes face to face with two arriving tanks who cease their ingress as soon as he's spotted and fire at him incessantly.
What the fuck do you think this is going to do?
Yeah.
Tickle him.
Yeah.
At best.
Yeah.
But through the smoke, Godzilla's maw yawns open to release another burst of his atomic breath, the ground below catching fire, following a flammable trail all the way to the two tanks who attempt to retreat. But back at the Disaster Response Center, the military personnel crowd around the chief at a table, a map resting in front of them as calls come into the headquarters, recounting the damage caused by Godzilla in the city. Fires raging out of control in the Shibaura district, another fire so large that it's spreading from Mitadai to Isarago, the breach of defenses at Fudanatsuji, the destruction of the 49th Armored Division. Further action is impossible. As machinery beeps around them, the frantic operators manning the phones call attention to all radio cars, and they order to initiate Security Command Code 129. We return to the streets of the city, where soldiers crowd around a car, listening into their orders regarding this very specific security command, which, as it turns out, is to abandon all combat initiatives and instead focus their efforts on fighting fires and rescuing casualties. The soldiers turn away from their car to face a nearby apartment building where the occupants stand as silhouettes in their windows, but just above them, through the smoke surrounding the building, lurches Godzilla, his heavy steps and screeching roar echoing over the soldiers. He unleashes another burst of his breath, aimed specifically at that car in front of him. And as the soldiers leap out of the way, the vehicle explodes in flames. As the surrounding city burns and crumbles to ruin, we get shots of the empty streets of Tokyo, neon lights flashing and highlighting its vacancy. So I did want to talk about this model city because the work is just unbelievable.
I'm obsessed.
As you had mentioned, Watanabe was part of the art direction for the film, but he was also in charge of designing a lot of the miniatures as well.
Okay.
Oh.
And they sought such accuracy for the city of Tokyo because they knew that they needed to impress people who lived in the city.
Yeah.
And so they would go out and they would scout the city together and try to amass the proper detail for what they would want to use in the film.
Okay.
There's a very funny story that they were talking about in that book because Watanabe went out with a few of his art direction team and they're in Tokyo and they're just walking around and they're like, and then we'll burn that building and then a fire will rage through there. And then an officer heard them.
Oh my God.
And he's like, what the hell? And he asked them, and the only way they got out of it was they showed their Toho motion picture cards.
Oh.
They're like, not us, Godzilla.
They're like, oh, you're free to go. All right. But that made me laugh. But as you had mentioned, you said that they built Godzilla to this 1/25th scale.
Yeah.
They built the city of Tokyo to a 1/25th scale.
I love it.
So it is exactly fitting with what Godzilla's height is meant to be with these heights of these buildings.
Yeah.
They said that the model city took a month to construct with 40 carpenters working tirelessly.
Woo.
A month is staggeringly impressive to me.
Yeah.
That is insane. 40 people. That's insane.
Yeah.
The work is so meticulous.
Mm-hmm. And they added extra details, like they made the floor out of sawdust, so when Godzilla walks around, it's like his footprints are creating debris.
Okay.
Like, it's a ton of really well thought out things. They were talking about the way that some of the buildings were constructed. Some were made to crumble on cue, and others were actually soaked in gasoline and fitted with explosive charges.
Oh my
damn.
God. That sounds pretty dangerous.
Yeah, honestly. But the amount of work that went into these miniatures and the just level of understanding as far as what the audience was going to see.
Yeah.
Trying to impress them with these sights of Tokyo that they are familiar with.
Yeah.
I think that's something I thought of when I was watching it too, because it was so incredible watching as somebody who sadly has never been to Japan.
Yeah.
I can't imagine watching a movie where like this is happening in our city. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you're like, oh my God, that's the like store I go to or whatever, you know? Like that would be wild.
No, yeah. It's very like, of course we know this isn't, Godzilla's not going through fucking shit up.
Yeah.
But watching it and seeing how good everything looks, how of course we can see like with the train, we tell when it goes back. It's
I love that.
But it doesn't matter because everything is done so good.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that to me that is real.
Yeah.
This is happening.
And wouldn't it be kind of fun to put on that suit and just stomp through that town?
Man.
Hell
Like, wouldn't that
yeah.
be so fun?
But on the ground in an alley, a mother, played by Tamai Sengo, cradles her young son and daughter, watching as Godzilla continues wrecking the city, smashing through buildings and blowing that atomic breath like it's going out of style. As her children cling to her, she tearfully tells them, "We're going to join Daddy. We'll be where Daddy is soon."
It was hard to watch.
Yeah.
It's so fucking sad. It's devastating. Like, this sequence is my favorite part of the film.
Mm-hmm.
And I was laughing because he just smashed a building with his tail and it looked really funny.
Yeah.
And then immediately it's this. And you're like, I'm getting swept away in the spectacle of this, and I'm so impressed by the work that went into it, by the way that we're maneuvering this costume, the way that everything is working together. And then it's like, oh yeah, like this isn't for funsies in the context of this film.
Right.
People are dying right now. Tokyo is being destroyed. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that was so, the timing of that was so like, hey, like, yeah, this isn't, it's not fun and games, you know?
And I think that's kind of what I was mentioning at the beginning, where I said it is this combination of spectacle and poignant commentary.
Yeah, because you want to be like, hell yeah, Godzilla. And then it's like, oh, fuck.
Yeah. Well, I too, it's that. And then I think, T, what you were getting at is like, we understand what Godzilla represents.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then seeing this, it's like, God damn,
that's what
dude.
it is. It's like, remember, like, don't forget what we're actually saying here.
Right.
I think that's another thing that I realized isn't as common as you would think. Whenever we talk about these older films, we look at vampires, for example, like we talk about Dracula in 1931.
Yeah.
Vampires can represent a ton of things. That could be something about, sexuality, repression, tons of things.
Yeah.
But it's very rare that it is so blatantly clear what this means.
Yeah, like just a direct parallel.
Yes, there is no room for interpretation. This is exactly what it is. So it's kind of wild, and it is all of those things.
Yeah.
Something else that also infuriated me a little, whenever they were talking about that American version of this film, and we say American version, but it's more Americanized.
Yeah.
Right.
Because it is a chunk of this film just with other shit added in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what I had mentioned about the scenes in Parliament being removed, that scene on the subway where they were talking about Nagasaki was removed, and this scene is shown, but they mute the mother's dialogue.
Wow.
Take the sting out of it.
Yeah.
And it's just like, why?
Just don't do it then.
Yeah.
Honestly.
If you're not willing to tell the whole story, then you can't have it. Like, just stop.
Yeah.
But we then see a group of soldiers strolling by casually, only to cower when Godzilla rounds the corner near them. It's like, what the fuck do you think this is?
Literally.
Yeah. Y'all didn't hear him walking over here?
Yeah.
Yes.
He's very loud. But the creature advances for them, only to stop when a nearby clock in a tower strikes midnight. He proceeds to knock the shit out of the tower, crumbling it to bits and smashing the building where the soldiers were hiding for good measure. A reporter stands in the street, shivering and sweating next to his colleagues as he bravely or foolishly reports the events unfolding before their very eyes.
I was like, what the fuck are y'all doing?
I understand, and that is admirable journalism.
I was going to say it's dedication.
It is, but you got to get to a place that is not the middle of a street.
Yeah.
That's where he steps. But in a wide shot, as sirens wail in the distance, we see the entire city engulfed in flames as the reporter lists all the districts that have been destroyed by Godzilla, who doesn't seem to be finished with his rampage and is now headed towards Tsukiyobashi. The reporter assures those watching at home that this is no play or a movie, insisting that this is real, the story of the century. And I imagine that was probably very neat to hear in the theater.
Yeah.
I always love when older movies do that and they're like, this isn't a movie.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh my God.
Oh, God.
But he asks if the world will be destroyed by a 2 million-year-old monster. And it definitely seems so, as Godzilla continues his march across a bridge, destroying train stations, stadiums, and reducing structures to ash. Lights flash at the Disaster Response Center as operational command staff rush around frantically, a voice on the intercom ordering them to proceed to Shelter 306 for safety. And just as the room is vacated, the ceiling crumbles under the weight of Godzilla's heavy tail. The next building Godzilla destroys gets an instant replay for some reason.
We needed to see it.
I guess.
So nice, we needed to see it twice.
But the creature continues on, now standing in front of the National Diet Building, seeming to take great pleasure as he crashes through the West Wing. I did see that this was the only structure that was, I think they did 1/33rd scale.
Okay.
Because the real Diet building is actually too large, and the visual of it made Godzilla seem smaller.
Oh,
Okay.
I get it.
But journalists nearby occupy a television tower and report on his rampage. The flashbulbs of the photographers capture the attention of the creature, and one reporter, played by Masaki Tachibana, makes note of it, asking, "There's no time to run. Will we survive? He's getting closer. This looks like the end." We watch as Godzilla approaches the tower, clutching it in his claws as the reporter can only comment on his immense strength, noting that this is really the end, and signs off.
A showman till the end.
I mean, with one chomp, Godzilla sends the tower careening to the ground below, and we watch in POV shots as the reporters fall screaming to their deaths. That was a bit much.
It was a lot. I read in that book as well that was another puppet making him bite the tower, which is, it looked really funny, honestly.
It did.
It's like, is he making out with that thing?
He was taking his time.
But from his laboratory in the basement, Serizawa is sat in front of a fish tank, watching the destruction on the television news, a reporter recounting that Tokyo is now a sea of flames, and that Godzilla is proceeding further, possibly heading for the sea. As the city burns brightly behind him, Godzilla marches through the water to approach a bridge, and from a safe distance, Yamane, Ogata, Emiko, and Shinkichi watch in horror among a captive crowd. Shinkichi cries, "Damn beast," as Godzilla topples the bridge over with ease, the resulting wave running nearby ships aground and flooding the city streets below.
Godzilla, he flipped that bridge.
He did.
Oh, yeah.
That was intentional.
Yeah.
What the hell was that for?
It was just like, I don't know, insult to injury.
Insult to injury is perfect. That's what it felt like.
Because it felt like, you're like, are you serious?
He knows that Yamane is watching.
Yeah.
And you wanted to save me?
Yeah.
What are you, stupid? Flip.
But suddenly, fighter jets arrive through the air, sweeping over Godzilla and firing missiles at him to the cheers of the citizens below. Unfortunately, literally every projectile misses Godzilla entirely.
Yeah.
I was like, does he have a force field?
I don't know.
And we should probably clear the civilians out.
Yeah. That's true. We're firing aimlessly.
They're like, figure it out. All right.
But Godzilla just keeps walking, swatting at the jets, and is eventually overwhelmed enough to descend back into the sea. The planes retreat, and the crowd clamors around our group, screaming, "He'll be back! How can we kill the bastard?" And I'm sorry, Yamane. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like every time you want to give him the benefit of the doubt, he's like, this is 10 times worse than what he did before.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's
Yeah.
it's escalating quickly.
Well, the problem is that Godzilla's a habitual line stepper.
He is.
So,
If anyone is.
yeah.
But as somber music plays, we pan across the ruins of the city, flaming debris and destruction. And the following day, in the bright sunlight, rescue workers and medical personnel fill nearby hospitals with the wounded and the dead. Doctors and nurses tend to their patients as a reporter announces over the radio that Godzilla seems to have retreated back to the sea for now.
Caused all that trouble and then just went back home.
Yeah.
But he adds that a research team headed by Professor Yamane has been formed to find countermeasures. We press into one of the crowded rooms in one of the hospitals, where Tanabe waves a Geiger counter over the face of a small boy, and when the machine buzzes, he looks to Emiko, who sits next to him and jots down his finding.
Terrible.
Yeah.
He shakes his head as a voice speaks over the intercom for Ogata, alerting him that the patrol boat's departure time has been changed and to report instead to a briefing room. We see him climbing the stairs in the hospital, and he passes a small child who weeps for her unconscious mother as she's carried away on a field gurney. Her cries pierce through the score as Emiko tends to her, cradling the young girl in her arms and passing her off to a nurse who assures the young girl that her mother will be back soon.
It's just so sad.
Yeah. It's that switch because we're watching this destruction that can be seen as this like fun element.
Yeah.
But then you're like, again, the human toll.
Yes.
But Ogata finds Emiko through the crowd, and as soon as he approaches her, she turns away from him tearfully before turning back to face him, revealing that there's something important that she needs to tell him. She leads him up a staircase to an isolated landing, and as they stand together in front of a window, Emiko declares that she can't keep quiet anymore. She says that she can break her promise now with a clean conscience. The promise she made to Serizawa.
Here we go.
I will say Ogata's like, Serizawa? It's like, dude, you're just jealous as hell.
Yeah.
It's like...
I feel like we need to be focused on the bigger picture here.
Yes.
They're not doing a very good job of that.
No.
But Emiko explains that it was a promise she made on the day that she visited him with Hagiwara. And as the camera presses in on her, we return to Serizawa's basement lab on that fateful afternoon. But after dropping his solution into the fish tank, Serizawa pulls Emiko away from it as she watches the small device sink to the bottom and emit a cloud of smoke. The water begins to bubble, and fish continue to swim through the haze of Serizawa's creation until a light flashes, and suddenly all the fish in the tank are reduced to bones, their small skeletons floating freely through the water of the tank. Emiko shields her eyes, screaming and burying her face into Serizawa's shoulder as the water continues to bubble and a pensive piano plays in the score. As she stumbles away, Serizawa helps her into a chair, and she asks him, "Did you?" And Serizawa confirms that he destroyed all of the oxygen in the water, which caused all of the organisms in the tank to suffocate. He states that their remains were then liquefied by his oxygen destroyer, which splits oxygen into fluids. Need to workshop the name.
Yeah. I mean, what you see is what you get.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. But he says that he intended to research oxygen thoroughly from every angle, but in doing so, he discovered an unexpected form of energy. He admits that after his first experiment, he was filled with horror at the power he had unleashed, sharing that he couldn't eat for days. But he reaches for the small dish containing his creation, revealing that just a small ball of this substance could turn all of Tokyo Bay into an aquatic graveyard. Emiko demands to know why he would create such a thing, but as he takes a seat behind his desk, he answers that his research is strictly in the interest of science. Emiko stands in front of him, wondering what would happen if his discovery was used for some awful purpose.
That.
Yes. Serizawa says that this is what he fears. If it were used for such a purpose, it would lead humanity to extinction, just like the H-bomb. But he promises Emiko that he's determined to find a use for the oxygen destroyer that would benefit society, and until then, he refuses to reveal its existence, which is why he didn't tell Hagiwara about it. I don't know what you could benefit. I don't know how this could be a good thing ever.
Yeah.
No.
I don't understand.
Yeah, and I see now why that Emiko was so like, oh my God. Dude.
Yeah. No, she was disturbed.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But I think also this film is kind of putting some onus on, I guess, scientific minds behind these really destructive inventions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's like, what good could come of this
Well, you
thing
think
that you've created? You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
you think of Oppenheimer,
Exactly.
and you're just like, what have you done?
Yeah.
What have you unleashed?
Yeah, why? Why did you do that?
Exactly.
But Serizawa says that if anyone tries to force him to use it before then, he's willing to give his own life and destroy his work rather than let it happen and fall into the wrong hands. Emiko understands, promising not to say a word, even to her father. The camera then pans over to the fish tank, empty of all its inhabitants, their remains floating lifelessly in cloudy and bubbling water. But back in the stairwell, Emiko laments that she's broken her promise, and Ogata responds with, "I see." But with a smile, he turns Emiko to face him, reminding her that she only broke her promise to save them all from utter disaster, and he's certain that Serizawa would forgive her. And he's like, or not, who cares?
Yeah.
Yeah, Serizawa is super chill all the time. I bet that he's going to be so fine about this.
Oh, yeah. But down in his basement laboratory, Serizawa is hard at work mixing a solution at his table when the doorbell rings up above. He climbs the staircase and greets Emiko when he sees her standing at the opposite end of the hall. But as soon as he makes his way toward her, Ogata calls out from the corner of the room. Dressed in a full suit, he approaches Serizawa, asking a favor of him. I guess he's like, if I look dapper, he would.
Yeah. That made me laugh because it's like he does not give a fuck about what you're wearing. Dude.
No.
And a favor is a huge understatement for what you're about to do. He's like, and also I'm in love with him. He goes, she's leaving you effective immediately.
Whether I get the thing or not.
Yeah.
That's just happening.
But Serizawa invites Ogata and Emiko to have a seat with him at the table, where at the center of the table now rests a small fish tank. Serizawa asks Ogata what kind of favor he's requesting, and Ogata cuts right to the point, asking if he can use his oxygen destroyer.
Dude.
It's like, can I borrow it?
Yeah.
But his reply fucking killed me. He goes, "What oxygen destroyer?"
It's like, I've never heard of those words put together.
He knows the name,
Yeah,
dude.
come
And he's
on.
here with Emiko. Like, it's over.
Yeah. Ogata requests that he stops with the pretense, and Emiko quavers, admitting that she told Ogata everything and pleads with Serizawa to let him use the oxygen destroyer. As Serizawa lowers his head in sorrow, his trust broken, Emiko sobs, begging for his forgiveness. But Ogata speaks for Emiko, revealing that she couldn't bear the sight of all that destruction in the city, asking on behalf of her for Serizawa's forgiveness. He levels with him that he's their only hope, but Serizawa is still hesitant, refusing to give it to them, acknowledging that if Emiko told him everything, then he understands why they can't use it. As Emiko continues to cry, Ogata asks, even to battle Godzilla? He is asked to leave. What else, dude?
Yeah. We need help. Like, you come on, man.
Serizawa storms out of the room and down to his basement laboratory, closing the door behind him. Ogata and Emiko are eventually able to break in, and they find Serizawa attempting to destroy his research, and a struggle ensues between him and Ogata. For some reason, the camera dips down to rest on the fish tank at the center of the room, where new fish swim around, and we don't see the struggle. But when it's over, Ogata lies in a heap on the floor, and he's helped to his feet by Serizawa and Emiko, blood pouring down the side of his head.
I was he fucked him up.
Like, you don't need to see this.
Yeah. It's like, look what you made me do.
It's crazy.
I couldn't believe it. I was like, do we have the ick now? She's like, wow, dude, you got your ass
like,
beat.
Like, easily.
Right, good thing we didn't tell my dad.
Yeah. But they help Ogata out of his jacket and plop him into Serizawa's office chair as Emiko tends to his wounds. Serizawa seems to notice that there's something in the way she moves. The way that she wipes Ogata's brow so carefully. A certain tenderness that causes Serizawa to recoil slightly in a gasp. He apologizes to Ogata and promises that if the oxygen destroyer could be put to good use, he'd be the first one to reveal it to the world. But right now, it's nothing but a weapon of mass destruction. He pleads with them to understand, and as Emiko wraps a bandage around Ogata's head, he assures Serizawa that he does understand. But he says that if they don't stop Godzilla now, what will become of them? Serizawa counters that if the oxygen destroyer is used even once, the politicians of the world won't stand idly by. They'll inevitably turn it into a weapon. A-bombs against A-bombs. H-bombs against H-bombs. He says, as a scientist, no, as a human being, adding another terrifying weapon to humanity's arsenal is something he can't allow. It's commendable.
He's right.
He's 1,000% right.
And in his defense, he invented it on accident.
Yeah.
It's not like he was seeking to make this to destroy Godzilla or something.
Yeah.
But Ogata and Emiko share a look before Ogata asks what they're meant to do about the horror facing them now. Just let it happen? He asserts that Serizawa is the only one who can save them from this tragedy. He says that even if he uses it to defeat Godzilla, how can it be used as a weapon if he never publishes his research? Serizawa states succinctly that human beings are weak creatures, and even if he burns his notes, everything is still in his mind. And as long as he's alive, who can say that he won't be coerced into using it again? He crumbles in dismay, wishing that he had never discovered it in the first place.
I was like, can't you just like take a stroll by the water and drop it in? Like, do we have to tell anybody?
I think it needs to be activated.
Yeah.
Well, tie a brick.
There's a big reaction that happens as well.
Yeah.
They might just think Godzilla did it down there. They don't know.
Well, we don't know what he's capable of. He has atomic breath that we didn't know about
Exactly.
earlier.
Yeah, no shit.
Blame it on Godzilla.
Yeah, he self-destructs sometimes, dude. It's wild. But as a choir of voices suddenly sings out, a voice on the television announces, "O peace, O light, hasten back to us." That's the prayer for peace being offered up nationwide today. The reporter declares that they're broadcasting one such scene from Tokyo, and he implores the viewer to hear these young girls as they sing from their hearts. As the choir serenely sings the prayer, the television shows a montage of devastation, ruin, as well as rescue and recovery. A camera pans through the aisles of a hospital room, nurses tending to the wounded, and we cut to a group of citizens gathered in front of a radio and clasping their hands in prayer, before finally setting in on a large room filled with schoolgirls as far as the eye can see, their voices uplifting and hopeful in the face of tragedy and destruction. The camera travels through the rows of the singing girls before returning to Serizawa in his laboratory, who is so overcome with emotion that he has to turn away. He finally stands up to shut off the television before gathering his notes and all of his research in his arms. I did hear that it was allegedly 2,000 girls that they had filmed here.
Wow.
Damn.
And they said that the song was written by Ifukube, the composer, and that these sections were actually filmed after principal photography. So the actors that are watching the television, there's nothing there.
Oh, okay.
And everything was added in post, but it all feels so connected.
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah.
And I was honestly very impressed by this montage because it shows kind of everything that has happened, but also everything that is the human spirit.
Yeah.
And so it's like, how could Serizawa not be moved by this?
Yeah.
But he turns to face Ogata and Emiko, telling them that they've won. But he says that this will be the first and the last time he ever allows the oxygen destroyer to be used. Ogata and Emiko follow Serizawa deeper into his laboratory as he feeds the flames of a fire with his research. He studies each page before burning them, and after the first few pages, Emiko crumbles into tears. Serizawa comforts her, telling her that this is the only way to make sure that this knowledge doesn't fall into the wrong hands. And we watch as his notes twist and burn in the fire. But sometime later, out on the ocean, ships gather as the triumphant trumpet sounds in the score. A group of journalists stand on the railing of one of the ships, accompanied by a fleet of Coast Guard officers, and one journalist announces that the decisive moment draws near, and that they'll soon know if the monster terrorizing the world will be buried forever in the ocean's depths. At the other end of the ship, Professor Tanabe waves his Geiger counter over the water as Ogata, Emiko, and Serizawa stand behind him, and he attempts to locate Godzilla in the ocean's depths. As Tanabe makes notes of his findings, Serizawa requests a diving suit from Ogata, who responds in confusion as Serizawa has no diving experience. But Yamane, who sits at a nearby desk on the deck, rises from his seat, intervening and imploring Serizawa not to be foolish. As the boat bobs rhythmically in the waves, Serizawa states that this is the only oxygen destroyer he has, and to be fully effective, it must be released underwater. Yamane nods his head in reluctant understanding, and Ogata suggests that they should go down there together then. But Serizawa assures Ogata that he can do it alone. Ogata calls him crazy and refuses to let a beginner go down there alone. He then calls out to his men to prepare another diving suit before returning his attention back to Serizawa, reminding him that he's to follow his orders before storming off.
He's like, look, you already beat me up in front of my old lady.
Yeah, dude.
Or your old lady.
Yeah.
Or whoever's old lady.
Our.
Yeah, our old lady. You're not going to steal this glory, too. I'm going down with you.
What's funny as well is that Emiko's standing there and like she still hasn't said anything about any of it.
She's like, wait.
By the way. But the reporter on the other side of the ship continues that this is the only batch of the oxygen destroyer in the world, and he wonders how much power it could possess, as Dr. Serizawa refuses to say. But as Ogata and Serizawa are fitted for their diving suits, the reporter states that all they can do is pray for their success. Emiko looks on, worry washing over her as Yamane reveals the oxygen destroyer, a massive silver ball about the size of a grapefruit placed inside of a large canister of metal and glass. We saw what like one the size of like a blueberry can do.
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm comparing everything to a fruit. It just makes sense to me.
It's
Well,
true,
yeah.
though.
But the father and daughter hand the weapon to Serizawa, who cradles it, admitting that he never thought he'd unveil his discovery like this. Emiko kneels down to Serizawa's side, clutching his shoulder, and whispers that she'll be praying for him. Not even putting on airs that you're pretending to be his fiancé, like no kiss, no. Nothing. She's like, good luck,
All right, champ.
buddy.
Get after it, bud.
And she mouths, I love you too. Oh, God.
Right, you come back.
Yes.
You got this, bro. Punches him in the arm.
Yamane places a reassuring hand on the shoulders of both men, imploring for them to be careful and telling Ogata in particular that he's counting on him. That was weird too.
I took it as you're the experienced one. You need to bring both of you back.
I almost took it as we had that conversation earlier.
Yeah.
My daughter needs to get married.
Yeah. Whichever one of you comes back up,
Sure.
you got it.
Fight down there. That's cool.
Well, he's not great on land, so maybe he'll fare better.
Who knows? Who knows? But Hagiwara stands pensively behind Serizawa, and the reporter on the other side of the ship announces, the attack begins. Emiko watches as both men are lowered into the water, now wearing their diving helmets, and she struggles against her own emotions as they reach the rocks below, sinking deeper and deeper into the ocean. The music grows serene as the men descend together, and an officer above on the ship alerts the crew that they've reached the bottom. There was something in this moment to me. The music and the suits, it reminded me of that mission on Final Fantasy VIII.
Yeah. Oh my God.
When you're floating through space.
Yes.
And it's like the most heartbreaking thing you've ever seen. But it was really reminiscent of it, and I wondered if it was a reference.
I can totally see that.
But at the bottom of the ocean, Ogata leads the way as Serizawa follows, clutching the oxygen destroyer in his hand, and we see Godzilla near them, his large head turning slowly and slightly to the left, seeming not to notice the men as they approach.
It looks like he's lounging.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I think I agree with Yamane now. He's just a little guy
What, because he can chill?
He didn't mean to do it. He looked really cute laying there, and then he just kind of looks over. He's like, he's home.
Yeah.
He is, but he's also resting to do more shit.
He's
dude.
also tuckered out from the shit he did before.
Yeah, dude.
But he did look really cute laying there.
He did,
did.
and you start to feel a little sympathy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's get him a present.
But the crew, now including Shang-Chi, who wears a full uniform, so I guess he is.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
But the crew watches with the others from above as Ogata and Serizawa seek refuge behind the rocks as Godzilla lurches his way forward through the water. As he approaches the men slowly, Serizawa taps Ogata's shoulder, and Ogata is raised up, leaving Serizawa alone on the ocean floor. As he reaches the surface, Ogata cries out for Serizawa, who stands below, beneath the water, clutching the oxygen destroyer as Godzilla comes closer and closer.
I feel like what he was saying in his lab,
Mm-hmm.
he never planned on coming back.
No.
I think that letting him in the water, that's it.
Yeah. But I mean, he is right. If he helps defeat Godzilla and comes back, they're gonna ask questions.
I know.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
just sad.
And
Mhm.
then he's right. What if they're like, you come here now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very heroic.
Yeah.
Serizawa plants the device between the rocks in Godzilla's path, but rather than alert the crew to pull him up, he stays on the ocean floor, watching through the window of his diving helmet as the device opens and begins to bubble, surrounding Godzilla as he silently roars. Ogata calls out to Serizawa through a radio, and we watch as the bubbles reach the surface, their force sending a wave that rocks the ship. But Serizawa answers Ogata's calls from down below, assuring him that it's working. And as he reveals a hidden blade, Serizawa proclaims, "I hope you two will be happy. Farewell."
That's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And him saying at the beginning of the film, maybe he came to say his final farewell.
Yeah.
And now he is saying his
Yeah.
final farewell.
It's a little foreshadowing.
Ugh.
Ogata cries for the crew to pull Serizawa to safety, but Serizawa's blade cuts through the tether, separating him from his only lifeline. The crew pulls his rope to the surface, coming up empty, and Yamane removes his hat, peering mournfully into the bubbling water beneath him. The water rises higher around the ship, and as Emiko clings to Ogata, Godzilla surfaces, bellowing a pained roar before sinking into the sea, his body disintegrating into bone as he reaches the ocean floor, before finally dissolving into nothing at all as the bubbles rise around him. I did read that a lot of the filmmakers that were a part of the production, they watched this scene and at the first screening cried for the death of Godzilla. They saw him as a misunderstood creature.
Okay.
On one hand, I can see that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because what was it born from? It's not his fault.
No.
But like also you can't be doing that.
No, and he seemed to relish part of it a little.
He liked
Yeah,
it. He liked
did,
it a little
he
bit.
did.
The bridge was when I was like, I think he might be an asshole.
That bridge was a turning point for me too.
But in all honesty, I mean, there is something very, very wise about the choice, and this is what I was talking about with the music.
Yeah.
Never does it become this big dramatic thing where they're killing Godzilla underwater.
Yeah.
It's the saddest composition, just this serene melody that's playing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very interesting that they chose that.
Yeah.
So maybe there is meant to be a bit of sympathy here.
Okay.
Well, it's sad. And I think that the choice that they made to, I know I was joking about how cute he looked earlier, but he is home.
Yeah.
Like he's not causing any problems right now.
Right now.
And right now. But the symbolism of coming into his space
Yeah.
and decimating it. You know what I mean? It's like,
It's another.
it's,
Yeah.
you know, it's not as though they were able to kill him while he was actively being a menace.
Mhm.
It is watching it is sad. And then you have Serizawa.
Yeah.
It's a heartbreaking ending, but it's a fucking great ending.
It is.
It really is, because like you're saying, And it sounds funny, but Godzilla is a product of his environment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seriously.
And Serizawa having to sacrifice himself to fix the wrongs that were made by humanity, giving his life to save, and even that he's watching his fiance with
Yeah.
somebody else.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like, and again, I get it. You made this on accident, but he even had the proper head on his shoulders to be like, this can never get out.
Well,
never.
that and sacrificing himself to not play a part in that cycle.
Yeah.
It's heavy.
Yeah. I feel like there's not a lack of character in the other characters. I just think that there's so much character in Serizawa that it makes the other characters feel less developed by comparison.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Because goddamn, what a character this is.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
And we don't even get a lot of time with him.
No.
But we don't need it. He's got the cool eye patch.
Exactly. That's all you need to know.
Yeah.
But the reporter announces, what emotion, what joy, victory at last. And he adds, I saw Godzilla's lifeless corpse sink into the sea with my own eyes.
All right.
Yeah.
It's like, I guess that's clear what's
Yeah.
happened here. But the reporter then declares that this victory belongs to Dr. Serizawa, scientist of the century. The music hums solemnly as Yamane takes a somber seat, his eyes never leaving the ocean. Shing-Chi wipes tears from his eyes as Hagiwara places a comforting hand on his shoulder, and a sobbing Emiko holds tightly onto the diving suit of a tearful Ogata, who collects himself, repeating Serizawa's last words. He wished them happiness together. But Emiko crumbles to the deck, away from Ogata as she sobs.
She's like, I picked the wrong one.
Yeah.
He's like, hey, so when I was down there, did you tell your dad about us?
Yeah.
Right, you heard him, right?
Yeah.
He said we're cool.
And I'm sorry, dude. After that moment, there's no way that you two can be together. That's just not going to work.
It's a cloud over.
Yeah.
Like,
Forever. They're like, we should have told him sooner.
Yeah.
Shit. But as a choir of voices rises around them, Yamane prophesizes, I can't believe that Godzilla was the last of his species. If nuclear testing continues, then someday, somewhere in the world, another Godzilla may appear.
I love the cautionary tale.
Yes.
It's giving maybe he lives next door to you.
Kinda.
It's opening the door for a sequel. But I'm left with, because I know there are many.
Yeah.
I didn't know how many.
No.
Now I do. But is this the only film with this Godzilla then?
I think.
Yeah, I tried to look for, I guess, timelines or how these kaijus are together or mixed up, but I'm still confused.
What's the next one?
The next one is Godzilla Raids Again.
Raids Again.
Yes. So
Maybe it's his
incredulous.
nephew.
maybe, yeah, maybe it's Godzuki. Yeah.
His ne'er-do-well nephew.
Well, one of his kids is Godzilla Jr.
Well, there you go.
So I don't know,
Jesus
maybe
Christ.
Maybe that's two.
yeah, take after his old man. Yeah.
It was just very shocking to me to see him die.
Yeah.
Because I was under the impression that he is raiding again. This motherfucker just keeps coming back.
Yeah.
They chase him into the sea.
Uh-huh.
He just keeps coming back. That's what I thought.
That was my interpretation as well. And it's not only that it's not like we see Godzilla's corpse like fall into the land.
Yeah.
He sunk to the bottom of the ocean. He turned to a skeleton
Yeah.
and then he was disintegrated.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's gone.
So there is no more.
No, yeah.
But I will say, like you're saying, this idea of the cautionary tale, this line, this section at the end that he says is really the whole point of this film.
Yeah.
And it's really, really amazing the way that they tie it all together and are able to end with that social commentary. To say, if you keep doing shit like this, monstrous things will find you.
Yeah.
But Professor Tanabe rises from his seat, joining the crew, Emiko, Ogata, Hagiwara, and Shing-Chi as they peer over the edge and into the water, saluting Serizawa for his heroic sacrifice. The camera rises above the ocean and out at the horizon as the choir of voices reaches a crescendo, and in the sunlight, we fade to black. So, what did you guys think of Godzilla?
I know I set it up at the top. I love Godzilla. I love what's going on here. getting to experience this for the first time for the show, actually watching it before the show, you know what I mean, a couple times, and then us covering it and learning everything that we did today. Like, I loved the movie even more. It was very refreshing watching it and being like, seeing the very first Godzilla movie and just being like, damn, this is fucking great. Again, the effects look good. The love triangle's a bit clunky, but I mean, I guess we get, what was going on. You know what I mean? We understand why movies do that. They add extra things to hold extra weight, and that's fine. But I really, really fucking enjoyed this movie. I loved learning about everything that went into it, hearing the production, the effects stuff. Like, it is just something that I remember as a kid watching and being fascinated with Godzilla, because by the time I started watching, Godzilla was a hero, or he was our protagonist. He wasn't, you know what I mean? He wasn't coming to fuck shit up anymore. It was like, Godzilla, help us. You got it. You know what I mean? So it's like, okay, that's what I know Godzilla as. But going back to the origins and learning about it, it's like, man, I really, really enjoy this a lot more than I did.
Yeah, I appreciated watching it, and I have a greater appreciation kind of after talking through it. Like you said, the love triangle, it's very unnecessary, but at times it was pretty fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
I am just amazed and astonished at what they were able to accomplish at the time as far as the effects, utilizing puppets and this crazy fucking costume and these miniatures, and it really, really is just impressive and incredible to me. The story is very intense when you look at it in the context of history and specifically where we were at in history. It's bold. It's a cautionary tale that, is just very striking. And I think they're able to kind of thread the needle and balance out the fun of, I don't want to say the fun of the destruction, but, that.
Yeah.
And still grounding it in the reality of what we're actually talking about here. So I think even moments where it kind of does misstep for me, the beginning piece where we're really star wiping from set to set or from, scene to scene, I was like, okay, this is fine. But I think once it finds its footing, it really, really works for me. Like, I really did enjoy this.
I definitely agree, and I really enjoyed it more than I expected to.
Yeah.
And it was really just based upon my own ignorant idea of monster films.
Okay.
I really thought it's really just the, destruction and fun of it, and get in, get out, goodbye.
Yeah.
But there are such poignant messages in this film and such timely messages, and it is the time of it that does make it so fucking bold.
Yeah.
They are not far removed from what happened.
Yeah.
And still reeling from it and responding to it through art.
Yeah.
And it's just this remarkable thing, and it really does make this film very, very special. And really the ways that it doesn't work for me are those ways that we said, this love triangle situation. I feel like some characters kind of fade away as compared to others.
Yeah.
I don't know what Ogata's point is, frankly, other than just so Emiko has someone after the fact.
I guess.
Because it's just, it feels very tacked on in that way, but I think that everything else feels so well thought out and properly and brilliantly realized.
Yeah.
We can just go into ratings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From the standpoint of the technical side, those composite shots in 1954.
Yeah.
How just so impressive. We talked about it whenever we were covering The Invisible Man. And you're like, it's the 1930s. How the hell are you doing this?
Yeah.
And even when you see how they did it, you're like, it's the 1930s. Yeah. How the hell are you? And I felt the same way a lot of times watching this. And the parts, yeah, sure, we see the seams show sometimes.
Yeah.
Godzilla's a hand puppet making out with his tower.
Yeah.
Let him have it.
And we loved every second of it.
Yeah, I have no issue with that at all.
No.
He's a hand puppet smiling for his photo on the island. I don't give a shit. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
And it's amazing, again, when you see the scale of it and you see this giant creature on the far side of this hill and hundreds of people running towards you on the other side.
Yeah.
It's still a spectacle. These buildings, these miniatures of this Tokyo that they built to scale,
Yeah.
it's remarkable. I'm very impressed by this film. I don't know how other films go, if they maintain this level of quality, if they maintain this level of commentary.
Yeah.
But I know that Godzilla 1954 is a fucking brilliant film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think those are really the only things that I would change, is things about that love triangle, or at least flesh out some of these characters a little more.
Yeah.
Why do you love Ogata?
Yeah.
I don't know anything about this dude.
Yeah. When did it start?
Yeah.
Yeah, seriously. Because how did you even meet?
And it's just such like a clumsy way of being like, so have you told him yet? Like,
Yeah.
I feel like that's 90% of their relationship.
Yeah.
And it's so funny, though. You're right, because there's that moment where they're rushing to see Godzilla destroy Tokyo.
Yeah.
And she's like, hey, hold on. I didn't get a chance. It's like, dude.
Right. Please don't be mad at me. Yeah.
It's hilarious.
But it happens so often. But no, I just think that the messaging of this film is incredible. It was poignant in 1954, and 70 years later, just as pertinent
Yeah.
and just as necessary. But for me, out of 10 radiated reptilian rampages, I am going to give Godzilla 1954. I am torn between two numbers, and I think I'm going to go for the higher one.
Okay.
Because I love it when I can be surprised by a film.
Yeah.
And I think this film surprised me in a lot of ways. So I'm going to give Godzilla 1954 8.5 radiated reptilian rampages out of 10.
Okay.
I will absolutely watch this again.
Hell yeah.
And I really, really... This was JP's idea to cover this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was the 70th anniversary, so it worked out perfectly.
Hell yeah.
But I am very glad that we got to watch this film and to talk about it.
Well, thank you, man.
Of course. But I will now open the floor to you.
I would just be repeating anything that I said earlier, but it's funny to think about, because and I don't ever hide my love for Pee Wee Herman, and Godzilla 85 is referenced in Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Those are things I love. Those are things I watched as a kid. Hey, it's Godzilla. Hey, it's Pee-wee. Watching the old Godzilla movies, watching the ones that come after from the 70s and whatever, and still not understanding, but just being like, oh shit, he's beating up another big monster. He's fighting this robot or whatever.
Yeah.
As a kid, you just watch it and you're like, man, this is crazy. The older you get, and then the more you understand and whatever, watching this movie made me appreciate so much more everything that I love and know about Godzilla. And learning about everything that went into it, the miniatures, how many people it took, the way they built the costume and the struggles of the actors trying to do everything was like, wow. And I think I'm with you, T, with watching a movie and then you're sitting there like, God damn, that was good.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting that. And I say it a lot. I'm not big on one for the hidden messages or the whatever, but the way that it's done here is done right. And it's done that it is, like you're saying, it is relevant. Even today, watching it is a cautionary tale. Stop fucking with things you don't need to be fucking with, because you're going to destroy humanity in your search for power.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need that. Like, we don't need that shit. And it did make me appreciate this movie a lot more. So for me, on a scale from 1 to 10, radiated reptilian rampages, I'm going to give Godzilla 1954 a 10. I really enjoyed this, and I will watch it again. And I know it might not be perfect, but the way everything is done, watching it and still being like, how did you do that? Like you said with The Invisible Man, I'm still just like in awe. That's fine. I don't care that we can see the seams or I can tell they're miniatures. To me, Godzilla's fucking some shit up.
Yeah.
And it's like, God damn, what this dude doesn't stop.
No, I completely agree. I loved, like you said, learning how these things were done, learning how this film even came to be. And again, like you said, T, channeling this trauma and this tragedy into art, into this cautionary tale, and we did, it's kind of wild how we were talking about it off mic. T had brought it up, J.J. Abrams kind of biting this. And again, it is cathartic. Cloverfield working through another tragedy.
Yeah.
But I mean, it is born here. And I think that it's incredible. I think that channeling something so awful into something so brilliant, it's like, I don't even have the word. But I am a sucker for miniatures. I love kind of peeling back the layers and seeing how special effects are accomplished. And when we get to these older films, like we were saying earlier, it's like, God damn, you guys didn't have a fraction of what we have now.
Yeah.
And look at what you did. It is just, it blows me away. I really can't say enough about the commentary. I think my only drawback is, like you were saying, T, some of the characters, I feel like we were setting up to get a lot more from people like Yamane.
Yeah.
And then they're just kind of gone. We all need mental health days to lay in bed and listen to the Smiths.
Right.
But now is not the time. Like, where were you for the last bit of this? You know?
He just shows up on the boat.
Yeah, he just pops back in. And the love triangle, while it is hilarious, it's so unnecessary.
Yeah.
It's so unnecessary, and it feels really shoehorned in a very comical way.
But I will say that everything with Shirazawa is perfect.
Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah, totally agreed. But yeah, I really loved this a lot more than I thought I would, and I have a greater appreciation for it even in the last handful of hours that we've talked about it. So on a scale from 1 to 10, radiated reptilian rampages,
You got it.
I am going to kind of go in between and give Godzilla 1954 a 9 out of 10 radiated reptilian rampages.
You're reading your notes.
Yeah.
I'm reading my notes.
Well, that's all from us at Pod Mortem. What would you rate Godzilla, and what should we watch next? Let us know on Instagram at the Pod Mortem. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter and like our Stairhole Productions page on Facebook. Be sure to follow each of us on Instagram and Blue Sky at TravisMWH, at Blood and Smoke, and at Juggalo Daddy 84. Thanks again to Original Cinematic for sponsoring this week's episode. Please consider pledging to our Patreon, where you'll gain access to over 200 hours of bonus content, our monthly schedule, our Discord server, and the opportunity to help us decide which films to cover. Stay tuned until after the music for a special thank you to our Wendigo Getter patrons. And remember, if we continue to learn nothing from history's atrocities, we'll be forever doomed to face monstrous consequences. Until next time. Thank you for staying tuned. We want to give a very special thank you to all of our Wendigo Getter patrons.
Woo! Yeah.
Very good work. A special thank you to
Chris Ontiveros, Kristen Lofton, Megan Martinez, Kimberly Bass, Sophie Hodson, Anthony Jerome M., Jordan Nash, Kent Morton, Lala Tamez, Travis Anissa Hunter, Miguel Myers ATX, Jennifer Perez, Allison O'Neill, Carissa, TJ and Angie Bronson, Gabrielle Trevino, Spooky Mom, Applin Ontiveros, Karima Rhodes, Antonio Huerta, Kimberly Kleindienst, Will Brown, Sydney Smith, Osvaldo Soto, Bobby Holmes, Donna Eason, JD Rezak, Molly Gerhard, Armand Spasto, Aaron Aguirre, Eggy, William Barry, Brittany Seaman, Charity Oxner, Amanda Six, Mandy Rainwater, Eden, Jordan Roberts, Dylan, Liz Heath, Spencer Montalvo, Pancake the Panda, John Ramos, Michael Newting, Alexis Roberts, Dan Laveau, Itzy M, Gary Horton, Leisha Olivier, Kate Lamp, Carlos and Sydney, Jessica Hunter, Helena Rudder, Alan Johnston, Mariah, Livy Fun, Scott Troutman Wise, Towton Watson, Mozzie Bear, Brittany G, Dave Burke, Adrian Stakes, Daniel McGinnis, Emma Hagel Kissinger, Valerie G, Emiliana, Brian Glass, CB, Taylor Santana, Will Lewison, Angelique, Smelly Poo Poo Head, Beth Bauer, Cookie, Esperanza J, Jason Kyle OKC, Joshua Rumley, Danielle Peralta, Brandon, Sawyer Reese-Farr,
Sahara, Girl That's Scary, Cassandra, Andrea Simmons, Ashley Higuera, William and Xxena Rush, Ryan Brom, Megan Ochoa, Laura Lassiter, Eileen O, Marissa E, Sydney, Henry F, Megan M, Strangely Sarah, Christy Beck, Nancy and Andy, Amanda Lopez, Andy Terrell, Jason Hanovan, Katie K, Erica Morin, Cameron S, Nicole Stewart, Triss Wynn, K.87, Mariah Jensen, Carrie A, Lonnie Lono, Powell, Kayla E, Maggie H, Murder Stina, Kevin McGonigal, Kristen Marcy, Ori81 Barikwa, Look Like That One Girl, Bog Boy, Felnez63, Alita Pui, Probably My Jugs, Kate Thackeray, Wade Pack, A Lizard, Bay J, Jay Rich, Jen Lassiter, Topher Williams, Elena Metler, Jean Jacket, Valerie K, Christy Lee Kruger, Professor of Humanities Laura McCarricker, Naomi, Josh Smith, Autumn Green, Abby Kopp, Crystal 831, Skank Sinatra, Morgan Alexander, Tony Osteen, Julie Fredborg, Rihanna S., Daniel Taylor, Anna Kate, Heather Ortiz, Jen T., Kim H., August, Vengeance Spirit,
Sam J. Green, Jenny May, Glittery Fab, Malik Caselli Armstrong, Scarly D, Toya Shea, Katie, Martin Shaw, Star, Tyler J, Daniel Dickerson, Jordan Gaddis, Cam Davies, Patrick Hoagland, Raven, D, Wesley Tart, Kristen Jackson, Jacob Nordberg, Spencer, Samantha, Damian Grant, Half Price Horror, Clemmy, Nisi Nay, Erica, Jason X Rules, Karen Burrows, 203 Duncan, Aaron Norman, Stephen Rogers, Victoria Smith, Corey Gillen, Patricia A. Graham, Erasmo Peña, Danielle Wright, Tabitha Thomas, Connie Lingus, Becca Boo, Richard Murray, Irene, Sally Slater 52, Jordan McCarthy, Christy Michelle Wilson, Rosalind Harnias, Emily Rance, Amy, Lisa and Kathy, Mike H., Karen with the Y, Christian Sadler, Hannah, Sarah Jack, Casey L., Evelyn Knight, Paula Garcia, Nikki M., Gasly Grandad, Megan and Alexandra Saldivar, Lisa Sykes, Sunny Jonas, Kelsey Niemeyer Cook, Martina LaForce, Robin, The Face Flowers, JG, Morgan Novello, Ashley, Abby Young, Alex M., Brandon C., Gordon Sutherland, and Georgia Renland. Thank you all so much.
Yes, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you all. We appreciate each and every one of you, and we hope you know that you're real monstars.
Aww.
We love them.
Yeah, that was good.
Until next time.